Chapter 212. The value of the Sharingan can only be reflected by the people who have the blood of Uchiha. So Obsidian was very curious about why Amatsukami would suddenly want the Sharingan. Zetsu smiled and said, I also overheard some news about Amatsukami. You may be interested in it. What news? Zetsu said, the leader of Amatsukami, Homasubi, is said to be an Uchiha clansman, and he is suspected to have the Manjikyu Sharingan, and he once defeated Uchiha Jishui. Obsidian was startled, and his face suddenly sank. In a shinobi world, there are not many people that Obsidian is really afraid of. Among them, Madara Uchiha and Yondaime Naruto Minato are the two people he is most afraid of. When Madara and Yondaime Naruto died, Obsidian gradually felt that the whole shinobi world was under his control, but with the sudden rise of Amatsukami, a sense of uneasiness slowly grew in his heart. After a while, Obsidian said slowly, Is the news confirmed? Jishui Uchiha is one of the two Uchiha clansmen who have the Manjikyu Sharingan. If Homasubi of Amatsukami has the strength to defeat Jishui, then Amatsukami is really not easy to deal with. Zetsu shrugged and said, It's just some information that I overheard. I can't confirm its authenticity. If you want, I can kidnap a few of my ninjas to further confirm the authenticity of the information. Obsidian immediately rejected Zetsu's proposal. No, we should not do anything at this time. Zetsu asked, What are you worried about? Obsidian said slowly, If Homasubi can defeat Uchiha Jishui, then the rumor that he has the Manjikyu Sharingan is very credible. But he is not the leader of Amatsukami, Zetsu said. Rumor has it that the leader of Amatsukami is someone called Yama. Are you worried about this person? Obsidian nodded. Being able to suppress Homasubi, who possesses the Manjikyu Sharingan within the organization, I'm afraid that Yama will be very difficult to deal with. I don't want to provoke such a troublesome guy at will. Ju said, I'm really curious who this Yama King is. Shifting his gaze towards the battlefield in the distant market, Obsidian said while observing the fierce battle between Uchiha Ryota and Hyuga, As long as Amatsukami doesn't interfere with our actions, there is no need for us to be enemies with them. When we start our operation and gather the nine-tailed beasts, everything in the shinobi world will be under our control. Ju chimed in, Moreover, we have the Eye of Samsara. Everything else is not worth mentioning in front of our eyes. Let me investigate Amatsukami, and when there is a suitable opportunity, we will consider whether to take action or not. After saying that, Obsidian seemed to remember something and asked, Have you confirmed the movements of the members of Amatsukami? Zetsu said, Don't worry. Shinichi Uchiha and Biwa Juzo's group have already returned to the land of rain ahead of time. Sasori and Kakuzu's group, plus Hiriko and Shino's group have all gone to the land of wind. At present, apart from us, there are no other members of Amatsukami in the land of fire, so they won't be used by Amatsukami like last time. Obsidian asked casually, Land of Wind? Are these two groups going to the land of wind to deal with the traitor Orochimaru? Zetsu explained, I heard that Sasori placed a spy beside Orochimaru. I guess it should be that spy who passed the information about Orochimaru to Sasori. At this moment, the outcome of the battle in the distant market was decided. In the end, Uchiha Ryota still had the upper hand and knocked down Hyuga. However, Uchiha Ryota did not completely lose his mind. After knocking down Richa, he did not kill him. Instead, he turned around and left the market. Looking at Richa, who was injured and lying on the ground, Obsidian was a little tempted. If he quietly killed Hyuga at this time and blamed it on Uchiha Ryota, then the Uchiha clan and the Hyuga clan would immediately become mortal enemies. But before he could do anything, Zetsu said, Someone is coming. After weighing the pros and cons, Obsidian gave up on this plan and said, Let's go. As soon as his voice fell, Obsidian's figure disappeared into the twisted vortex. Zetsu looked in the direction of the market and then quietly disappeared into the trunk of the big tree as if he had never appeared. In the market, whoosh, whoosh, with the sound of breaking wind, two figures landed in the market, which was ablaze with flames. Both of them had a waist scarf with a fire pattern on their waists, revealing their identity. They were the 12 guardian warriors who were directly under the daimyo of the Country of Fire. This time, Mai's encirclement and suppression of Amatsukumi's organization involved many towns and markets in the Country of Fire, so the daimyo of the Country of Fire had sent some of his 12 guardian warriors to cooperate with my village's operation. And these 12 guardian warriors hurried over because they saw the raging fire in the market from afar. Looking at the injured people falling in the fire, one of them quickly said, "Asma, hurry up and save them." Asma, who had become one of the 12 guardian warriors, said in a deep voice, "Teru, be careful. Maybe the enemy is still nearby." The 12 guardian warriors, who came with Asma, was a monk from the fire temple, Teru. He nodded. Then his figure flashed and began to rescue the injured in the fire. A moment later, Asma found Richa lying in a pile of rubble, seriously injured. As the son of 3 generations, Asma knew Richa's strength very well. So he quickly helped Richa up and exclaimed, "Senpai Richa, who attacked you?" Asma's exclamation immediately attracted the attention of Teru. Cough, cough. After coughing twice, Richa said weakly, "It's Uchiha Ryota. He's crazy." Asma and Teru looked at each other when they heard this. They didn't expect that Uchiha's people would be crazy enough to attack their companions, destroy the market, and slaughter the innocent. At that moment, another group of my ninjas were attracted by the fire in the market and rushed over. When everyone found out that Uchiha Ryota had not only attacked Richa, but had also destroyed the market and killed a large number of innocent people, they were filled with righteous indignation. Even in times of war, Konoha's ninjas rarely slaughter civilians for no reason, let alone their own people. Ryota Uchiha's act of killing innocent people had aroused everyone's indignation, especially Asma and Teru, who were directly under the daimyo of the Country of Fire. They were clamoring to arrest Ryota Uchiha. The news quickly spread back to the village. Knowing that Ryota had openly attacked his companions and that the person he had attacked was the younger brother of Patriarch Hyuga, Jishuei quickly found Hyojin. Chapter 213. We learned that Uchiha Ryota attacked Richa Hyuga. Jishuei was taken aback. In the eyes of others, although they are both a noble shinobi clan of my village, whether it is power or reputation, Uchiha clan is undoubtedly better than Hyuga clan. But only Jishuei understands that the real strength of a Hyuga clan with Hyojin Hyuga is better than Uchiha clan. So he can't imagine what the consequences would be if Uchiha Ryota really killed the younger brother of the Hyuga clan. As soon as he saw Hyojin, Jishuei apologized again and again, asking for Hyojin's forgiveness. However, Hyojin waved his hand and said, "I was negligent. This Uchiha Ryota has an extreme temperament. Under the situation of being stimulated, it is not surprising that he would do something crazy." Even in the Uchiha clan, which is prone to extremes, Uchiha Ryota belongs to the extreme category. So when his brother Hideki was attacked and his life and death is unknown, it is actually reasonable for him to do something crazy. Jishuei was a little sad. He had originally given up the plan to attack Uchiha Ryota because he felt that maybe only sacrificing Uchiha Hideki could save the Uchiha clan and let Uchiha clan and the village reconcile. But things turned out contrary to his wishes. Uchiha Ryota's madness not only disrupted the harmonious atmosphere between the clan and the village that he had painstakingly created, but also almost caused the clan to provoke the Hyuga clan. So he had to restart the plan and continue to eliminate the extremists who were detrimental to the clan. Having made up his mind, Jishuei said, "Kuroto-san, when will we make a move against Ryota?" Hyojin glanced at Jishuei and said with a smile, "I thought you would hesitate for a while." Jishuei couldn't help but smile bitterly. The plan has already progressed to this point. How can we give up the whole plan just because of Ryota? Hyojin no longer teased Jishuei, pondered for a moment, and said, "You go and investigate the movement of Uchiha Ryota first. Find a suitable opportunity. We will act together and end this quickly." My heavy torture room. Knock, knock. The sound of knocking on the door interrupted Danzo's thoughts. He frowned and said, "Come in." Soon, A root ninja walked into the office with a document in his hand and reported to Danzo, Danzo-sama, this is the summary of the information we have obtained so far. Danzo took the document and asked, Amatsukomi Organization's headquarters. The root ninja shook his head. So far, we haven't gotten any useful information about Amatsukomi, and none of the interrogators knew anything about the origins of the members of Amatsukomi. Bang! Danzo slammed the document he had just received on the table and said angrily, We don't know anything? Then what is this document you sent me? Are you trying to use this garbage to fool me? The root ninja quickly replied, Danzo-sama, this is information about Akatsuki Organization. Akatsuki Organization. Hearing the words Akatsuki Organization, Danzo's eyes suddenly turned cold. He picked up the document on the table, but after reading it for a while, his face turned ashen. Orochimaru, Uchiha, Shinichi, Hiriko, these damned traitorous ninjas from the village. They actually joined Akatsuki Organization. What is Akatsuki trying to do? Looking at the familiar names on the document, Danzo was furious. Unlike Hyojin, who always wore a mask and cloak to hide his scent, Akatsuki Organization's identity was completely different. When the members of Akatsuki Organization acted outside, almost all of them showed their true faces and acted without any scruples. Therefore, when I swept most of the black market in the Land of Fire and captured a large number of black market members and bounty ninjas, after some interrogation, information about Orochimaru, Uchiha, Shinichi, Hiriko, and other members of Akatsuki Organization who once operated in the Land of Fire were immediately exposed. When Hyojin acted as Yama or Suijin, he used Mai's intelligence network, and most of the time, he used the Tenseigan chakra mode to fly and didn't come into contact with any unrelated people. Therefore, although Hyojin completed many bounty missions as Yama, the people he came into contact with were either dead bounty targets or the few black market bosses who received him. The members of Akatsuki Organization are different. Most of them travel on foot, and they don't have a ready-made intelligence network, so whether it's food, accommodation, or collecting information, they need to come into contact with a large number of black market members. Therefore, when the black market members were suddenly captured by Mai, their information was inevitably leaked. Putting down the document, Danzo thought to himself, it seems that the previous rumors are true. Before this, there was a rumor that Orochimaru and Uchiha Shinichi joined a bounty ninja organization, but the senior members of Mai, including Danzo, didn't believe this rumor at all. Because in the eyes of the three generations and Danzo, a ninja at the level of Orochimaru would never join a bounty ninja organization. As for Uchiha Shinichi, the senior members of Mai have long believed that he joined Kyumo, so the senior members of Mai suspected that this rumor was deliberately spread by Kyumo in the black market. But now, with Mai's full strength, the real strength of Akatsuki Organization is gradually revealed. The thought that there are so many powerful traitorous ninjas hidden in Akatsuki Organization, Danzo couldn't help but feel uneasy. Traitorous ninjas like Orochimaru, Uchiha Shinichi who awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan. Even if they're singled out alone, they're enough to give Danzo a headache. So at this moment, Danzo suddenly felt that the threat of Akatsuki Organization to the village seems to be above that of Amatsukomi. After a long silence, Danzo suddenly asked, Is there any information about the leader of Akatsuki Organization? The root ninja, standing on the side, hurriedly replied, The leader of Akatsuki Organization is very mysterious. It seems that he has never shown his face to the outside world, no matter how we interrogate and lure him. The captured black market members and bounty ninjas couldn't provide any useful information. Danzo ordered in an indisputable tone, Continue to interrogate him. I want to know everything about Akatsuki Organization. Yes. The root ninja wiped the sweat on his forehead and carefully withdrew from Danzo's office. At this time, Danzo picked up the document containing the information about Akatsuki Organization and muttered to himself, Akatsuki Organization, Amatsukomi. What exactly do they want to do? Suddenly, another root ninja came into the office and reported to Danzo. Danzo-sama, we just interrogated a new piece of information. Amitsukami and Akatsuki organization seem to be enemies, and there was a fierce conflict between them. Chapter 214. This new piece of information immediately aroused Danzo's interest. For him, if Amitsukami and Akatsuki are enemies, then there's a lot of room to maneuver. He even had the thought of sitting on top of the mountain and watching the tigers fight. So, he suppressed all kinds of thoughts and asked, "Do you have any detailed information on why these two organizations are hostile to each other?" The root ninja immediately replied, "According to a black market member, Amitsukami Suijin had a fierce battle with Akatsuki's Kakuzu in the Land of Fire, but the details are unknown." Danzo then asked, "What's the cause of the battle?" "The cause is unknown for the time being, but according to the black market member, Akatsuki's Kakuzu commissioned the black market member to investigate Amitsukami. So the black market member guessed that Amitsukami and Akatsuki had a dispute over a bounty mission." Danzo scoffed at this speculation. In his opinion, Amitsukami and Akatsuki are so powerful that it's impossible for them to have a dispute over a bounty mission in the black market. There must be some other reason behind it. After the root ninja left, Danzo got up from the bench and paced back and forth in his office. According to the information obtained through interrogation, Danzo has a general understanding of Akatsuki, or rather, the organizational structure of Akatsuki, the behavior of its members, and so on are still within the scope of his understanding. Except for the mysterious leader, everything else is within the scope of a bounty ninja organization. But Amitsukami is completely different. Danzo didn't expect that he would be unable to dig out any information about Amitsukami even after such a large number of arrests. If it weren't for the fact that Amitsukami has indeed acted several times recently, he would have even begun to doubt whether or not Amitsukami really exists. Collecting his thoughts, Danzo once again reviewed Amitsukami's recent actions in his mind, and after comparing it with Akatsuki, he suddenly had a flash of inspiration, as if he had grasped something. Sometimes, no information is also a kind of information. Not being able to dig up any clues about Amitsukami's organization was also a clue from another perspective. Just think about it. A bounty hunter organization as powerful as the Akatsuki also needs to rely on the black market intelligence network throughout the shinobi world to collect information. So why would Amitsukami not need the black market intelligence network? There was only one answer. Amitsukami had another intelligence network. Considering how efficient Amitsukami's previous bounty missions had been, as well as the accuracy of their recent missions, Danzo boldly deduced that Amitsukami's intelligence network was definitely better than the black market's intelligence network. And in the shinobi world, only the 5 great shinobi villages can surpass the black market in terms of intelligence gathering. Is Amitsukami an empty shell created by a shinobi village? This thought flashed through Danzo's mind. The Mist Village has just gone through a civil war and is greatly weakened. They don't have the strength nor the will to do such a thing, so we can eliminate them first. The Sand Crypsis' funding has been cut by the Windlands Daimyo, and they are also our Mai's ally, so we can eliminate them for the time being. If the Cloud Village wants to sacrifice their leader to find an excuse to start a war, there are too many ways to do so. There's no need to create Amitsukami. The Rock Village is the most suspicious, but if it was done by them, they could have just killed Watanabe in the village. Why would they waste time and effort to send the corpse to the black market? Isn't this clearing the suspicion for our Mai? Also, how could the Rock Village recruit the Uchiha clan who has awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan? After eliminating all the possibilities, Danzo fell into a state of confusion again. At this time, his eyes suddenly swept to the name Uchiha Shinichi on the Akatsuki intelligence document, and suddenly a thought flashed. Could it be that the Uchiha clan did it? With the reputation of the Uchiha Mai clan, it shouldn't be difficult for them to secretly recruit an ice-release ninja who defected from the Mist Village. As for the owner of the Manjikyu Sharingan, there is a ready-made Uchiha Jishue in the Uchiha clan. Therefore, the Uchiha clan has the ability to impersonate both Suijin and Homasubi of Amitsukami. Thinking about this, Danzo's brows that had just relaxed just now twisted again, because he suddenly discovered that there is a fatal loophole in his speculation. That is, why did the Uchiha clan attack the Kyumo envoy leader and take a huge risk to send the corpse of the Kyumo envoy leader to the black market? If the attack on the Kyumo envoy leader can be said to be an attempt by the Uchiha clan to provoke a war between the village and the Kyumo village, then the risk of sending the corpse of the Kyumo envoy leader to the black market is completely contradictory to the former's actions. However, Danzo didn't hesitate for too long because he suddenly realized that this is a good opportunity to deal with the Uchiha Jishuei and seize the Manjikyu Sharingan. Knock! Knock! Soon, Danzo heavily knocked on his cane. An Umbu ninja heard the sound and entered Danzo's office and asked, "Sama, what are your orders?" Danzo said solemnly, "Secretly spread the news that Uchiha Jishuei is Homusubi of Amitsukami." Yes, the root ninja was a little surprised, but immediately nodded and left the office. At this time, Danzo's face regained his confidence. He doesn't have any evidence that Jishuei is Homusubi of Amitsukami, but for him, it doesn't matter whether there is evidence or not. All he needs is an excuse. Just like how he dealt with my white fang, Hataki Sakumo. At that time, Hataki Sakumo's prestige had surpassed my Sannin, and with the name My White Fang, he was the strongest competitor of the 4 generations Naruto. Such a character, if left unchecked, would pose a great threat to the Naruto faction. So, Danzo took advantage of Hataki Sakumo's failure to use the root to spread the news that was unfavorable to Hataki Sakumo, so that the secret mission that should have been sealed in the archives was spread to the streets, trying to damage Hataki Sakumo's prestige in the village. However, no one expected that Hataki Sakumo would value his honor so much that he chose to commit suicide under everyone's criticism. Later, when 4 generations accepted Kakashi as his disciple, it might be because Naruto wanted to compensate the Hataki family. After all, Hataki Sakumo's death, from Naruto to the villagers who blamed him, everyone was responsible. Chapter 215. Hyojin and Jishuei are naturally unaware of everything that happened in my torture room. At this time, they are outside a dilapidated village in the Land of Fire. On a big tree, Hyojin, who had changed into a Yama costume, quietly opened the Tenseigan and carefully observed the village in the distance. According to the latest intelligence, this seemingly dilapidated village hides a secret black market corpse warehouse, so the Konoha ninjas who participated in the encirclement of Amitsukami are currently searching the entire village. Jishuei, who had also changed into a Homusubi costume, asked in a low voice, "Kuroto-san, the information I received should be correct, right?" Hyojin nodded lightly. "Well, Uchiha Ryota is in this team." After getting Hyojin's confirmation, Jishuei said, "Then let's hurry up." Hyojin stopped Jishuei. "Wait a minute." Jishuei looked puzzled. "What's wrong?" "The village is surrounded by the Oil Woman clan's parasitic worms. Once we take action, we will be exposed immediately." After explaining, Hyojin continued, "It is best to wait for Uchiha Ryota to separate from the others before we take action." The previous incident of Uchiha Ryota attacking Richa Hyuga had a very bad impact on my clan. As the patriarch of the Uchiha clan, Fiwa spent a lot of effort and even personally went to the Hyuga clan mansion to suppress this matter. However, because of the attack on Richa Hyuga, no one is willing to travel with Uchiha Ryota anymore. So now the only my ninjas who are with Uchiha Ryota are only a few members of Uchiha clan and a few members of the Root clan. Because Uchiha Ryota has a criminal record of killing innocent people, Asuma and Kuroku, who were directly under the daimyo of the Land of Fire, also followed the team this time, responsible for monitoring every move of Uchiha Ryota. Suddenly, the village was ignited by a raging fire. Looking at the raging flames and billowing smoke, Hyojin and Jishuei, who were discussing how to separate Uchiha Ryota and my ninja team, stopped. Listening to the villagers crying in the distance, Jishuei's face immediately sank. There is no doubt that Uchiha Ryota couldn't suppress his killing intent and started a massacre in the village. Hyojin said coldly, "Humph, it seems that we don't need to spend any effort." Sure enough, as soon as Hyojin's voice fell, a fight broke out in the village. After a while, Uchiha Ryota knocked down several of his companions, got rid of the team, and left the village alone. Hyojin and Jishui looked at each other and immediately followed quietly. Uchiha Ryota seems to have found some news in the village just now, so he didn't wander aimlessly, but ran in one direction. After following for a while, Jishui asked, "Kuroto-san, can we start now?" Hyojin observed the surroundings with the Tenseigan and nodded. "Well, there are no ninjas in the nearby villages. We can start now." After discussing, the two immediately used the body flicker technique and caught up with Uchiha Ryota in front of them. Seeing Hyojin and Jishui dressed up as Amitsukami, Uchiha Ryota was furious and shouted, "You damn bastards! Where did you take my brother?" In the eyes of Hyojin, Uchiha Ryota, who killed innocent people, is already a test subject, so he didn't bother to say a word of nonsense and directly signaled to Jishui next to him. Jishui understood and nodded. Uchiha Ryota is different from the previous Uchiha Hideki. Whether it is the pupil power of the Sharingan or the comprehensive strength, as the younger brother, he is far above his brother Uchiha Hideki. It can be said that in the current Uchiha clan, his combat power is only second to Fuyue and Jishui. Therefore, in order to avoid accidents, Hyojin and Jishui have already discussed to take action together and strive to take down Uchiha Ryota in one fell swoop in the shortest time. The silence of Hyojin and Jishui made Uchiha Ryota immediately realize that the other party's target this time is probably him. As a member of the Uchiha clan who specializes in doing dirty work, Uchiha Ryota's combat experience is even above that of Patriarch Fuyue, so he didn't hesitate and decisively chose to take the initiative. After a quick hand seal, Uchiha Ryota shouted, "Fire release! Great fireball technique!" Almost at the same time, Jishui also completed the hand seal, "Fire release! Great fireball technique!" Boom! Two huge balls of flames collided with each other, creating a loud, rumbling sound. While the sky was temporarily blocked by the flames, Hyojin moved his body and flashed to Uchiha Ryota's side. At this time, Uchiha Ryota, who had just released the fire release ninjutsu, took out a signal stick from the ninja bag on his waist and was about to throw the signal stick into the sky. Hyojin's eyes were sharp and his hands moved quickly. He slammed his palm towards Uchiha Ryota's head and attacked Uchiha Ryota's right hand, which was holding the signal stick. Just as Hyojin was about to hit Uchiha Ryota's right hand and snatch the signal stick, he suddenly saw a strange arc at the corner of Uchiha Ryota's mouth. Bang, bang. In a breath's time, two muffled sounds were heard at the same time. One of the sounds was when Hyojin hit Uchiha Ryota's right hand and snatched the signal stick from his hand. The other sound was when Uchiha Ryota's left hand hit Hyojin's chest. Then, Uchiha Ryota shouted in a low voice, "Psychic summoning technique, Cage." In an instant, Uchiha Ryota's left hand, which was pressing on Hyojin's chest, extended a psychic summoning technique. Bang! In a puff of white smoke, an iron cage covered with sealing techniques appeared. The iron cage was like a living thing. Countless iron bars extended out and bound Hyojin's body and limbs. This guy saw through my attack on his head, and it was just a feint. He purposely used the signal stick in his right hand as bait to attract my attention. Finally, he used his left hand to cast the psychic summoning technique. Thinking of this, Hyojin secretly spat. "Tisk, I've been tricked." Regardless of Uchiha Ryota's character, his superb battle intelligence was enough to be praised. Even Hyojin had to admire him. The leader of God's organization is just SOSO. Glancing disdainfully at Hyojin, who was trapped in the iron cage, Uchiha Ryota slowly shifted his gaze to Jishui and said disdainfully, "It's your turn." As soon as Uchiha Ryota's voice fell, he heard a crackling sound. When he turned his head, he was shocked to find that the iron cage he had summoned was being pulled out of shape by an unknown force. Yama, who was trapped inside, walked out slowly and said with a chuckle, You Uchiha people have a lot of strange tricks. Chapter 216. The way Hyojin got out of trouble made Uchiha Ryota feel a great sense of crisis. He has a wealth of combat experience, but even if he racked his brain, he couldn't figure out what kind of ninjutsu Hyojin used. Sure enough, as Patriarch said, this Amitsukami organization is really strange. The expression on Uchiha Ryota's face gradually became solemn. Although he is a bloodthirsty and crazy person, he is not stupid, or, to put it in other words, the more the murderous nature of a person like him is, the more they know how to avoid harm. Therefore, his intuition tells him that this is a moment of life and death. This kind of intuition is a special talent that Uchiha Ryota obtained after awakening the Samagatama Sharingan, and he didn't mention it to anyone. It was this intuition that allowed him to shine in the cruel Third Shinobi War, and with his proud achievements, he became a powerful figure in the Uchiha clan, second only to Patriarch Fuyue. He also became the commander of the Uchiha clan's execution team that specializes in dirty work. It must be known that no matter which clan, those who are responsible for the dirty work are the elites of the clan, because the weak simply can't do this kind of work. If it weren't for Jishue who awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan, then until now, Uchiha Ryota would still be the number 2 figure in the Uchiha clan. At this time, while walking towards Uchiha Ryota, Hyojin deliberately provoked him and said, "Compared to that waste Uchiha Hideki, you are much more cunning." Uchiha Ryota wasn't angered by Hyojin's casual words. Instead, he looked deeply at Hyojin and Jishue, seemingly trying to remember their appearance, then quickly made hand seals and shouted, "Summoning!" Bang! Instantly, a burst of white smoke rose. When the smoke dissipated, a big tabby cat with a napkin tied around his neck, a fork in his left paw, a knife in his right paw, and half a fish head in his mouth appeared in front of everyone. The big tabby cat who was chewing the fish head mumbled, "Ryota, didn't I say that I don't provide service during mealtime?" Uchiha Ryota didn't answer, but immediately made hand seals and forcibly canceled the summon, sending the big tabby cat away. Shursui was shocked to see this. He didn't care about exposing his identity. He shouted, "Senpai, that ninja cat just now is Grass Fishball that can use 100 kinds of ninjutsu. He is trying to escape." Without Jishue's reminder, Hyojin already guessed Uchiha Ryota of Uchiha. So when Uchiha Ryota sent the cat away, he used Rain Wheel of Rain, Uchiha Ryota. This Uchiha Ryota, who was waiting for Grass Fishball to escape, was suddenly pulled by a huge force, and his body involuntarily flew towards Hyojin. At the same time, Hyojin jumped up and made hand seals in the air and pressed his palm on the shoulder of Uchiha Ryota, who was flying towards him, and shouted, "Contract seal, seal!" Before Uchiha Ryota could react, Jishue, who was also pulled over by Hyojin Ryota, took the opportunity to use Jinjutsu on Uchiha Ryota. The exchange just now happened in the blink of an eye. The whole process only lasted for a few breaths. When the three of them fell from the sky, not only was Uchiha Ryota's contract with the outside world sealed, but he was also caught in the Jinjutsu battle with Jishue. Uchiha Ryota's pupil power is by no means comparable to Uchiha Hideki's. In the past, he was defeated by Shursui in the family. A large part of the reason was that he underestimated Shursui, who was 10 years younger than him. But this time, it was a life and death battle. So even if it was Shursui, it would be difficult for him to use illusion techniques to subdue him instantly. This is also the reason why Hyojin made the first move, because according to the original battle plan, Hyojin was responsible for attracting the attention of Uchiha Ryota, creating an opportunity for Jishue to launch a sneak attack. The reason for this arrangement is that Jishue can only instantly subdue Uchiha Ryota in the case of sneak attack. If it is a head-on confrontation, the situation is very difficult to predict. In the original time and space, Itachi, who has activated the Manjikyu Sharingan, if he wants to instantly subdue Kakashi, who is not a member of the Uchiha clan, he would need to use his Manjikyu Sharingan's unique pupil technique, Tsukuyami. And Jishue obviously won't use his Manjikyu Sharingan's pupil technique, Kodo Amitsukami, to deal with Uchiha Ryota in this kind of battle. Hyojin didn't hesitate at this time and directly slapped the back of Uchiha Ryota's neck, knocking him out. As Uchiha Ryota was knocked out by Hyojin, Jishuei staggered a few steps and withdrew from the Jinjutsu duel, saying, "Ryota's pupil power seems to have become a lot stronger than before," Hyojin said while applying the four-symbol seal on the unconscious Uchiha Ryota. This guy almost escaped. Listening to Hyojin's words, Jishuei also has a lingering fear in his heart. If Uchiha Ryota escapes this time, it will make him realize that Amatsukumi's target is him. Then it will be very difficult to find an opportunity to attack him again. Moreover, no one can guarantee that Ryota didn't see anything during the fight just now. After completing the seal, Hyojin urged, "Leave him to me. You leave here immediately and find a suitable opportunity to show up in another place to wash away the suspicion on you." Jishuei didn't say much. His figure flickered and disappeared. Hyojin slowly printed the hand seals and activated the Tenseigan chakra mode. While using the Tenseigan to observe the surroundings, he carried the unconscious Uchiha Ryota towards the secret prison. Swish, swish, swish. Not long after Hyojin left, several figures arrived on the battlefield. These people were none other than Asuma, Kuroku, and several of the Uchiha clan's clansmen who were with Uchiha Ryota before. Of course, their purpose of chasing Uchiha Ryota was different. Several of the Uchiha clan's clansmen were worried that Uchiha Ryota would be attacked by Amatsukume alone, while Asuma and Kuroku came to find trouble with Uchiha Ryota as the 12 Guardians. Coming to the twisted and broken iron cage left on the battlefield, one of the Uchiha clan's clansmen said with a gloomy face, "Not good. Ryota might be in trouble." At this time, Asuma and Kuroku noticed the flare stick that fell on the ground on the battlefield and said, "Does this flare stick belong to your Uchiha clan?" Another Uchiha clan member leaned over and glanced at it for a moment, then nodded and said, "Well, this is our Uchiha clan's unique flare stick. It's probably left behind by Ryota." Asuma said with a serious face, "Since Uchiha Ryota can't even send a signal for help, the other party is probably a member of Amatsukume." Chapter 217. Inside the Secret Prison. Before Hyojin injected the anesthetic into Uchiha Ryota woke up from his coma. Ryota didn't shout as Hyojin expected, but calmly observed the surroundings, and then said coldly, "It's really ironic. Who would have thought that the so-called Amatsukume is actually a ninja from the village?" Hyojin, who was leaning against the rock wall, crossed his arms and smiled slightly. Uchiha Ryota stared at Hyojin and asked, "That was Jishuei just now, right?" Hyojin was a little curious. "How did you notice it?" Grasscarp Ball spends most of his time fishing for grass carp by the pond of the cat village. Even in our Uchiha clan, there are not many people who can recognize him at a glance. And someone who has Manjikyu Sharingan and can recognize Grasscarp Ball at a glance, humph, besides Jishuei, I can't think of anyone else. After a pause, Uchiha Ryota sneered again. "I didn't expect that Jishuei would eventually choose to betray the clan and join the village. But if the Uchiha clan really collapses, will the village let him go? Although I fell in his hands, I believe that it won't be long before he comes to the underworld to accompany me." Obviously, after realizing the identity of Jishuei, Uchiha Ryota, just like Uchiha Hideki before, also mistakenly thought that the mastermind behind Amatsukume is a high-level member of the village. Hyojin said with a smile, "There is no need to sow discord. He is not here." Uchiha Ryota curled his lips and snorted lightly. Although what he said just now is his true thoughts, it does contain some intention to sow discord. He wants to use this opportunity to sow discord between Jishuei and the high-level members of the village. At this time, Hyojin walked to stand before Uchiha Ryota. "You are an elite of Uchiha, a high-ranking commander of the police force. I have a few questions for you, and I hope you can answer them truthfully." Uchiha Ryota glanced at Hyojin contemptuously. "What do you want to know? How much do you know about Izanagi?" Hyojin asked flatly. After hearing the name Izanagi, Uchiha Ryota's pupil shrank, and he said in shock, How do you know about Izanagi? That traitor Jishue even told the village about this? Soon, Uchiha Ryota shook his head. No, Jishue doesn't know the secret of Izanagi. His position is uncertain. The patriarch will not tell him the secret of Izanagi. It seems that you really know a lot. After a pause, Hyojin said, Tell me everything you know. You should know that at this point, pointless struggle will only make you suffer more. Uchiha Ryota smiled and said, I advise you to give up. Izanagi is the forbidden technique of our Uchiha clan. Without the bloodline of our Uchiha clan, without Sharingan, it is impossible to learn it. Hyojin didn't say anything and retreated to the rock wall. In the original space and time, those who did not have the bloodline of the Uchiha clan but mastered the secret technique of Izanagi, only Danzo with a large number of Sharingan and Hashirama cells can do it. However, the Izanagi performed by Danzo can barely last for a minute, while Obsidian, an Uchiha clansman, can last for at least 5 minutes. Therefore, what Uchiha Ryota said just now is not wrong. It is indeed difficult for people who are not of the Uchiha clan to master the secret technique of Izanagi. Even if they barely master it, the effect of Izanagi is far from that of the orthodox Uchiha clansman. After a long silence, Hyojin asked, Do you know this forbidden technique? Of course not. Uchiha Ryota answered very simply, and then he said in a self-deprecating manner, In the clan's teachings, Izanagi is regarded as an ominous curse technique, is forbidden to learn, and our clan leader is used to the rigid teachings. It took me a lot of persuasion to get him to agree to provide the Izanagi forbidden technique to the clansmen on the eve of the rebellion. Hyojin's eyes turned cold when he heard this. If Uchiha Fuyue really revealed the Izanagi forbidden technique to the whole clan before the rebellion, then the strength of the whole Uchiha clan will immediately double. Hyojin thought about something else, and then casually said, Should I believe you? Uchiha Ryota snorted coldly. Believe it or not, it's up to you. Hyojin laughed. That's right, if you really know Izanagi, I'm afraid this forbidden technique will be spread to the whole Uchiha clan overnight. If a radical like Uchiha Ryota mastered the Izanagi forbidden technique, he would definitely spread it to the whole clan, forcing Fuyue to speed up the process of the rebellion. But the Uchiha clan has not made any move, so it means that Fuyue still has the Izanagi forbidden technique in his hands and did not leak it to the outside. Uchiha Ryota said bitterly, The patriarch is always looking for the best time to launch a rebellion, but the best time is never something that can be obtained by waiting. Hyojin was not interested in discussing the rebellion with Uchiha Ryota. He said lightly, If you don't even know Izanagi, then you definitely don't know Izanami, which is specialized in restraining Izanagi, right? Uchiha Ryota frowned. Izanami? Seeing Uchiha Ryota's expression, Hyojin knew that he had never heard of Izanami. But this is also normal. Even Izanagi has been sealed as a forbidden technique by the Uchiha clan, so it's not surprising that Izanami, who can restrain Izanagi, isn't known to the Uchiha clan. Isn't known to the Uchiha clan? Uchiha Ryota asked. This Izanami is also our Uchiha clan's forbidden technique? Even I don't know about it. How do you know? Did Jishue leak it to you? Hyojin did not answer. Since Uchiha Ryota could not provide him with more information, he naturally had no interest in discussing this topic with Uchiha Ryota. Knowing that Hyojin would not say much, Uchiha Ryota did not continue asking, but asked a question that he had been suppressing in his heart for a long time. My brother, is he dead or alive? Hyojin smiled. Is that important? You can't be thinking that you can still save him, can you? Uchiha Ryota said, Since it's not important, then there's no harm in telling me, right? Hyojin pondered for a moment, then clapped his hands. Not long after, a scream came from the cave next door. Uchiha Ryota immediately recognized the scream. It was his brother, Uchiha Haichu's voice, so he could no longer maintain his calm and roared fiercely, I will kill all of you. Chapter 218. Hearing Uchiha Hideki's screams and Uchiha Ryota's curses, Hyojin didn't pay any attention to them. At this time, under his strange Alma mask, his magnificent Tenseigan was blooming with a dazzling light, concentrating on observing the chakra fluctuations inside Uchiha Ryota's body. Unlike Uchiha Hideki, Uchiha Ryota doesn't seem to have any resistance to seals. Therefore, even if he was in a state of extreme rage and was imprisoned by the four-symbol seal, there wasn't much chakra fluctuations in his body, let alone forcibly opening the Sharingan like Uchiha Hideki. After observing for a while, Hyojin shook his head. There is no doubt that the simple stimulation of anger can't stimulate Uchiha Ryota to awaken the Manjikyu Sharingan. It can't even stimulate him to break the four-symbol seal and open the three-tomo Sharingan. Clap, clap. At this time, Hyojin clapped his hands again. The crisp sound echoed in the cave. And as Hyojin clapped, Uchiha Hideki's screams in the cave next door gradually subsided. Uchiha Ryota, who was tied to the stone pillar, asked, "What do you want? If you want a Sharingan, why don't you do it? Why do you want to torture my brother?" Hyojin ignored Uchiha Ryota and walked to the cave next door. Uchiha Hideki, who was also tied to the stone pillar, was panting weakly. His body was covered with scars. It seems that he had just been severely tortured. In front of Uchiha Hideki, there was a puppet standing upright. This puppet was seized from the Sand Crypsis during the battle between the Konoha village and the Sand Crypsis. The puppet itself is very ordinary. It's a standard puppet used by the Chunin shinobi of the Sand Crypsis. It can't use any ninjutsu. It can only launch pre-installed shurikens and small throwing tools. This type of puppet has no research value. After being seized by the Konoha village, it is generally used to practice how to deal with the Sand Crypsis puppet master. Coincidentally, Hyojin lacked a servant in the secret prison, so he used his identity as an Umbu subordinate to Naruto to get one from the Umbu warehouse. After activating it with a large amount of Tenseigan chakra, this puppet, like the Kazakage's puppet, has a certain level of intelligence. Although its combat power is only close to the level of a Chunin, it is more than enough to do some rough work such as execution, cleaning, and pouring water. Waving his hand at the puppet, Suijin said lightly, "You may leave." The puppet immediately put away the torture tools and retreated to the side. Uchiha Hideki, who had just finished his torture, raised his head tiredly and looked at Hyojin and asked, "I think I heard Ryota's voice just now. Tell me it was just my illusion." Hyojin said, "No, it's not an illusion. He is next door to you." Uchiha Hideki looked at Hyojin and said, "What do you want? I will give it to you. Let him go. The relationship between you brothers is better than I thought." After a pause, Hyojin continued, "But I'm sorry, I can't let you go." Uchiha Hideki was silent. In fact, he understood that at this point, the guy in front of him wearing a devil mask will never let the two brothers go. Not to mention the two brothers. He even felt that the whole Uchiha clan would be destroyed by the conspiracy of the village's higher-ups. After carefully observing Uchiha Hideki with the Tenseigan, Hyojin did not say anything else, turned around and returned to his study room. In the study room, Hyojin took down the two notebooks on the bookshelf with Uchiha Hideki and Uchiha Ryota written on them and spread them on the table. After thinking for a while, he picked up the pen and wrote, "The test of anger has failed. Anger is not the best emotion for Uchiha Ryota and Uchiha Hideki. Uchiha Ryota's eyesight is far stronger than Uchiha Hideki's. The probability of him awakening the Manjikyu Sharingan is higher. Uchiha Ryota is very cunning. He seems to have noticed that I am deliberately provoking him. Perhaps he has a certain degree of understanding about the method of awakening the Manjikyu Sharingan." Writing until here, Hyojin stopped. The awakening of the Manjikyu Sharingan is a certain degree of chance. Perhaps the talented Uchiha clansmen have not been able to awaken the Manjikyu Sharingan in their lifetime because they have not received enough stimulation. On the contrary, the less talented Uchiha clansmen may have been too strongly stimulated and accidentally awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan. Therefore, for this time's stimulation experiment, Hyojin did not have too much hope, and his mentality is very calm. Because awakening the Manjikyu Sharingan is too idealistic, it can be said that it can only be found by chance, Maybe you will find nothing, but inadvertently, there will be an unexpected harvest. Therefore, in this stimulation experiment, Hyojin focused more on how the Uchiha clansmen will change under different extreme emotional stimulation. After closing the notebook, Hyojin did not stay in the secret prison for long, but immediately returned to his monitoring post. In the blink of an eye, a few days have passed. The disappearance of Uchiha Ryota immediately caused an uproar in the village. All the Mai ninjas regarded the action of Amitsukami as a serious provocation to the Mai village. Therefore, the village's sweep of the black market in the Land of Fire became more severe, and many irrelevant small ninja organizations were also implicated and became the target of the village. At the same time, a rumor that seemed absurd but made some sense began to spread in the village. And the protagonist of the rumor is naturally Jishui. After hearing about this rumor related to her, Jishui suddenly felt a rush in her heart. She quickly found Hyojin and said anxiously, "Senpai, we have been exposed." These days, Hyojin was either carrying out the monitoring task of Umbu Team 11 or thinking about his own stimulation experiment, so he really did not pay much attention to the quietly spreading rumors in the village. So, at this moment, when he heard Jishui suddenly say this, he was stunned at first, and then asked, "How do you know?" Jishui was a little anxious. "The village has already spread the news. Everyone knows that I am Homusubi of Amitsukami." When Hyojin heard this, a strange expression appeared on his face, and he murmured, "That's not right. Even if the village has this kind of evidence, it is impossible for them to spread this evidence to everyone, right?" Jishui was startled. "Yes, the village spread this news. Isn't it worried that I will betray them because of the matter being exposed? Strange, this is really strange." Hyojin rubbed his chin and said, "What on earth has been exposed?" Chapter 219. The more Hyojin thought about this matter, the more he felt strange. If Hyojin was Naruto of 3 generations, and he had the evidence that Jishui is Homusubi of Amitsukami, then he would definitely choose to secretly summon Jishui. As soon as Jishui arrives, he would cooperate with Danzo, Jiraiya, and the others who have been lying in ambush in advance, and swarm Jishui at the lowest cost. At that time, whether it is torture or detention, he can choose at ease. But now, Jishui hasn't even been arrested yet, and the news has already spread like wildfire. No matter how you look at it, this doesn't seem like the style of Naruto of 3 generations. After thinking for a moment, Hyojin said with certainty, "There must be no evidence in the hands of the Konoha." After the initial panic, Jishui also calmed down, while this rumor seems to have been deliberately spread by someone. Hyojin followed this line of thought and said, "The person who spread the rumor is obviously targeting you. The other party may not have any evidence, but this kind of thing doesn't actually need any evidence. Judging from the current situation, the person who spread the rumor is obviously trying to alert the snake, waiting for the snake to jump out on its own." As for how the other party guessed that Jishui is Homusubi of Amitsukami, this point is actually very easy to speculate, because there are only 2 people in the shinobi world who possess Manjiki Sharingan, and their identities have been made public. So, the person who spread the rumor is probably just a casual move by the other party. Kuroto even had a rough idea of who the other party was. In Mai, the Uchiha clan will not throw dirty water on Jishui, and the 3 generations Naruto is currently focused on winning over Jishui. The only one who is really trying to deal with Jishui and sees Jishui's Manjiki Sharingan is actually Danzo. In such a short period of time, the only one who had the ability to spread the rumor to the entire village, other than the Black Ops, was the root controlled by the Danzo. The Danzo had both the motive and the ability, so Hyojin didn't need to think much to figure out who was the one controlling and spreading the rumors. Thinking of this, Hyojin hurriedly said, "You should sort it out now and see if there are any flaws." Jishui carefully recalled all the actions he carried out as Homusubi and said, "The only flaw now is that I had a pupillary contest with the Patriarch. Once the Patriarch becomes suspicious and has another pupillary contest with me. I'm afraid. Everyone's chakra is the same as the smell. There are subtle differences. The pupillary force based on chakra is no exception. Jishui once had a pupillary contest with Fuyue as Homusubi of Amatsukami. In that contest, although Jishui concealed the shape of his Manjikyu Sharingan and didn't use any pupillary technique unique to his Manjikyu Sharingan, his pupillary force actually collided with Fuyue's pupillary force. If Fuyue didn't suspect anything, then everything would be fine. But if Fuyue became suspicious of Jishui because of the rumors in the village, then as long as he had another pupillary contest with Jishui, Jishui would immediately be exposed. Hyojin rubbed his chin habitually and said casually, "Will your patriarch believe the rumors and test you?" Jishui shook his head and said, "I don't know." Hyojin's face sank. In that night's battle, Hyojin and Jishui were each other's alibis. If Jishui is confirmed to be Homusubi of Amatsukami, then it will be difficult for Hyojin to escape. At that time, all the members of Amatsukami will be caught. In the bottom of his heart, Hyojin secretly thought, "How should I solve this problem?" The best way to clear Jishui of suspicion is to find another Manjikyu Sharingan possessor to disguise as Homusubi of Amatsukami. However, it is not easy to find a Manjikyu Sharingan possessor. In the entire shinobi world, even including Obsidian and Kakashi, there are only 5 people who possess Manjikyu Sharingan. Should I call Shinichi? As soon as this thought came to his mind, Hyojin shook his head. In the previous communication, Shinichi has already informed Hyojin that all the members of Akatsuki have withdrawn from the Land of Fire. So it will be very difficult for Shinichi to sneak into the Land of Fire at this time. Secondly, once Shinichi is involved, then Shinichi will know the details of Amatsukami, and the consequences will be unimaginable. Finally, when Shinichi caused havoc in the village, he fought with many villagers, so he may not be able to play the role of Homusubi well. And if he is exposed and Akatsuki learns that Shinichi appeared in Mai as Homusubi of Amatsukami, then his undercover career in Akatsuki will come to an end, and he will inevitably be hunted down by the Akatsuki. It seems that I have to speed up the progress of the stimulation experiment. If I am lucky enough to obtain a pair of Manjikyu Sharingan, then all the trouble will be solved. Hyojin has this expectation mainly because Uchiha Ryota is a very outstanding member of the Uchiha clan. One must know that in the Uchiha clan, anyone who can awaken Sharingan can be generally regarded as an elite because the Uchiha clan is different from the Hyuga clan. In the Uchiha clan, there are many mediocre clansmen who can't even awaken Sharingan. And Uchiha Ryota is one of the most outstanding among all the elites of the Uchiha clan who can awaken Sharingan. So in terms of aptitude alone, he is absolutely qualified to awaken Manjikyu Sharingan. After making up his mind, Hyojin said to Jishui, "Remember, don't admit to anyone that you are Homusubi of Amatsukami. If your patriarch tries to test you, don't resist. I may not be able to say anything to others, but with your patriarch's indecisive character, as long as there is no irrefutable evidence, he won't do anything to you." Jishui nodded. "I understand." As if thinking of something, Hyojin added, "Also, don't meet Danzo alone. If he summons you, he is likely to make a move on you." Jishui frowned. "Is it really that serious?" "Be careful. There is nothing wrong with it." After saying that, Hyojin smiled and comforted, "Don't worry too much. I still have a backup plan, but it will take some time, so during this time, you must not make any mistakes." After bidding farewell to Hyojin, Jishui soon received a message from the Uchiha clan, asking him to return to the clan's mansion immediately. Jishui knew that this is a hurdle that can't be avoided, so without hesitation, he immediately rushed to the clan's mansion. Swish! Just as Jishui passed through a small forest and was about to enter the Uchiha clan's mansion, a figure descended from the sky and landed in front of him. Jishui asked curiously, "Itachi, what are you doing?" Itachi stared at Jishui and asked sincerely, "Brother Jishui, are you Homusubi?" Looking at Itachi's sincere gaze, Jishui, who could not lie, sighed softly and nodded. Chapter 220. For some reason, Jishui didn't want to lie when he saw Itachi's sincere eyes. However, he had just promised Hyojin not to admit his identity as Homusubi from Amitsukami, and now he had to admit it to Itachi. This made Jishui feel uneasy and regretful. Just when Jishui didn't know what to say, Itachi suddenly bowed deeply to Jishui. Jishui was puzzled. "Itachi, what are you?" Still bowing, Itachi said, "Brother Jishui, please promise me that you will never admit that you are Homusubi from Amitsukami in the mansion." Jishui helped Itachi up and asked, "Don't you hate me? I attack my people." Itachi shook his head. "Brother Jishui, I admire you very much. Not only did you find a way to stop the family from rebelling, but you also dared to carry it out. You are indeed the #1 genius of Uchiha." Jishui scratched his head in embarrassment. "You guessed it?" Itachi nodded. "It's not hard to guess. Hideki and Ryota, who were attacked by Amitsukami, are well-known radicals in the family. So, Brother Jishui, you joined Amitsukami because you want to use Amitsukami to attack the radicals in the family and stop the family from rebelling. The incident with Sasuke last time was also because of your protection, Brother Jishui. Otherwise, Sasuke wouldn't have survived. That incident with Sasuke was indeed an accident. We didn't expect him to appear there." After a brief explanation, Jishui asked curiously, "How are you so sure that all this was not planned by the village?" Itachi said naturally, "The village has no reason to attack the leader of the Kumo delegation, so I speculate that Amitsukami and the village are not on the same side. Speaking of which, I'm really curious about what kind of organization Amitsukami is." Jishui said, "I can't reveal anything about Amitsukami to you for the time being. But don't worry, Amitsukami has no ill intentions towards the village or the Uchiha clan." Itachi nodded and immediately said, "Let's go. I'm afraid father is getting impatient." Soon, Jishui and Itachi arrived at Uchiha's mansion. Sitting in the hall, Fuyue glanced at Itachi, who was accompanying Jishui, and said in a deep voice, "Itachi, you can leave now. I have something to tell Jishui alone." Itachi didn't say anything and silently left the hall. When there was no one else in the hall, Fuyue stared at Jishui. "You must have heard the rumors in the village." "Yes." Fuyue's gaze turned cold. "Don't you have anything to explain?" Jishui gently shook her head. In an instant, Fugaku's ink-colored eyes turned scarlet, and Fugaku's eyes turned scarlet. Almost at the same time as Fuyue opened his Manjikyu Sharingan, Jishui found that everything around her had once again turned black and white like that night. At this time, 2 huge Manjikyu Sharingan appeared in the black and white sky, looking at Jishui indifferently like a god. Immediately afterward, a cold voice came from the sky. "Jishui, I need your explanation, and the clan also needs your explanation." Jishui followed Hyojin's instructions, and under the influence of Fuyue's Manjikyu Sharingan technique, she didn't put up any resistance and allowed the mottled black and white to invade her body, erasing her original colors one by one. Jishui's action was obviously beyond Fuyue's expectations. He asked, "Why didn't you resist?" Jishui said, "Why should I resist? I believe that the patriarch will not hurt me." Fuyue was speechless for a moment, and after a long pause, he said, "From now on, without my permission, you are not allowed to leave the clan's territory." Jishui frowned, "But I am a subordinate of Naruto, Sama's Umbu." Fuyue said coldly, "You are sick. Naruto-sama will understand." Jishui nodded helplessly. Fuyue removed the Manjikyu Sharingan's Jinjutsu, then waved his hand toward Jishui. "You may leave." Jishui bowed to Fuyue, then quietly left the hall. Looking at Jishui's departing figure, Fuyue's face suddenly became gloomy. If he only believed those rumors before, then after the test just now, he has already believed them 60%. Because he has always kept the secret that he awakened Manjikyu Sharingan a secret from Jishui, but when Jishui fell into his Manjikyu Sharingan jutsu, she didn't seem surprised at all. This undoubtedly shows that Jishui has seen his Manjikyu Sharingan jutsu, and the first time he used it in actual combat was against Amatsukumi's Homusubi. Therefore, even if Jishui didn't compete with him with Jutsu, Kuroto began to suspect that Jishui is Homusubi of Amatsukumi. It's just that he lacks evidence. The only thing that Kuroto can't figure out is what Amatsukumi wants. First, they attacked the leader of the Kyumo envoys. Then they attacked Uchiha's clansmen. Amatsukumi's actions not only offended the village's top leaders, but also threatened Uchiha's clansmen. Fuyue really can't understand what Amatsukumi is doing. It didn't take long for the news of Jishui's illness to reach Danzo's ears. Danzo can naturally see that the so-called illness is just a lame excuse. This behavior of the Uchiha clan is obviously to restrict Jishui's actions. But this way, Kuroto is in a bit of a predicament. According to Kuroto's expectations, after the rumors ferment in the village, the Uchiha clan will inevitably jump out to clarify for Jishui, and then he will ask Jishui in the name of the commander of the operation to annihilate Amatsukumi. Finally, he will take the opportunity to control Jishui, seize Jishui's Manjikyu Sharingan in one fell swoop, and obtain the Kodo Amatsukumi that he's been dreaming of. But he didn't expect that as soon as the rumor spread, the Uchiha clan would put Jishui in confinement. This time, Kuroto has no way to start. Only those idiots of the Uchiha clan can come up with such a lame excuse. Kuroto didn't suspect that Jishui is Homusubi. He is used to manipulating conspiracies. Instead, he suspects that the Uchiha clan has seen through his plan and wants to protect Jishui in this way. Outside the Uchiha clan, Guy shook his head helplessly and said to Kakashi and Hyojin, "Hey, the Uchiha clan still won't let us go in to see Jishui." Hyojin has already expected this. If that's the case, then let's go. Kakashi also nodded. Combining the recent rumors in the village, Kakashi immediately noticed that something is wrong, but as long as Jishui is in the Uchiha clan's territory, there should be no problem in terms of safety. Before leaving, Hyojin took one last look at the Uchiha clan's territory. That night, neither Hyojin nor Jishui expected that Fuyue would lead the elites of the Uchiha clan to participate in the pursuit. So when Jishui fought with Fuyue, she had already left an irreparable flaw. If everyone was in a blind spot and did not think about Jishui, everything would be fine, but once someone mentioned it, it would be hard for Jishui to hide it. Chapter 221. Uchiha Clan, Jishui's House. Itachi brought a pot of hot tea and poured a cup for himself and Jishui while asking, "Jishui-san, what kind of person is the leader of Amatsukumi?" Picking up the teacup and taking a sip, Jishui said, "In my opinion, he is the only person who can save Uchiha." Itachi was obviously stunned for a moment. Why? Jishui's face sank and said faintly, "Even if the radicals in the clan are temporarily solved, with the current atmosphere within the clan, new radicals will soon appear to fill the gap. This is inevitable." Itachi nodded in agreement. In the Jonin stage, the advantage of the Uchiha clan is very obvious. Almost as long as the Uchiha awakens the 3 Magatama Sharingan, they will naturally have the strength to surpass the ordinary Jonin. And with the growth of the pupil power year by year, most of the Uchiha with the 3 Magatama Sharingan will step into the ranks of the elite Jonin. This is also the reason why the elite Jonin of the Uchiha clan is the best in the Mai, because almost all of the Uchiha clan who can open their eyes and survive the cruel war have the potential to be promoted to the elite Jonin. With great strength, they will naturally seek the corresponding political position. When they were suppressed by the powerful Senju clan, the arrogant Uchiha could barely accept it, but with the decline of the Senju clan and the decline of the Hyuga clan, the Uchiha clan can no longer swallow their heads. Today's Mai, if all the shinobi clans are counted as a unit, no one is the opponent of the Uchiha clan. But Uchiha, who has the strength above all the shinobi clans, does not even have half a seat in the decision-making of the village. Not to mention the position of the Hokage, even the position of the Elder Advisory Group that participates in the decision-making of the Konoha village doesn't belong to the Uchiha clan. This undoubtedly makes the Uchiha feel desperate about gaining power in the Konoha village through normal means. This is the reason why the Uchiha clan rebelled. There were only two ways to solve this problem. Otherwise, the village would give Uchiha Naruto, or at least give Naruto the position of a candidate or an advisory elder. Otherwise, the village would be annihilated by Uchiha. Anyone with discerning eyes could see that the current strength of a Naruto clan was no longer enough to suppress the Uchiha clan. If it was during the first generation, the village might have been able to give Uchiha the position of an advisory elder, but the current Naruto clan no longer had the strength and magnanimity to delegate to Uchiha. In this way, a vicious cycle was formed. The more the Naruto faction guarded against Uchiha, the more it would stimulate Uchiha's rebellious mood, and a stronger Uchiha's rebellious mood, the more the Naruto faction would reject Uchiha. In the past, Jishuei couldn't find any way to solve this vicious cycle and could only watch the clan and the village gradually become like fire and water. But now it's different. Jishuei raised his cup and took a sip of hot tea and smiled. If that person becomes Naruto, I think he will definitely be able to break the shackles and truly accept our Uchiha clan. After leaving the Uchiha clan's land, Hyojin walked on the road out of the village. Although Jishuei took a leave of absence due to illness, the task of Class 11 has not been suspended by the 3 generations, so the remaining 3 people of Class 11 still need to continue to carry out the task. Not long after leaving the village, a black crow landed on Hyojin's shoulder. Hyojin teased it and then took a small letter tube from its leg. Unlike ordinary Uchiha clansmen, Jishuei didn't choose a ninja cat from the land of cats as his summoning beast. Instead, he chose a crow as his summoning beast. Due to Jishuei's influence, Itachi also chose a ninja crow as his summoning beast instead of a ninja cat. Therefore, both Jishuei and Itachi can be regarded as the representatives of Uchiha and Ninja Crow clan. After opening the letter tube, Hyojin understood what happened to Jishuei in the Uchiha clan's land and felt a little relieved. At present, the situation hasn't developed to the worst stage, but no one can predict the Danzo's next move, so Hyojin knows that he must speed up the stimulation experiment. In the blink of an eye, half a month has passed. The village was still wiping out all kinds of illegal organizations in the Land of Fire. Although the information about Amatsukami was still very little, the continuous wiping out allowed the village to unexpectedly seize a large amount of money from all kinds of illegal organizations' lairs. Therefore, although the operation to eliminate Amatsukami didn't make any progress, the number of my ninjas joining the operation increased day by day. Not to mention the others, just the Hyuga clan alone had more than a dozen Jonin and Chunin ninjas participating in the operation. In a secret prison, Hyojin looked at the bruised Uchiha Hideki and slightly frowned. Hyojin didn't have any special hobbies, so he wasn't interested in torturing people. In fact, he was even a little disgusted by it. However, it was inevitable to torture the target of the experiment. At this time, the Uchiha Hideki who had just woken up struggled to open his eyes and glanced indifferently at Hyojin in front of him. Then he let out a low, cold snort. Hyojin sighed lightly and said, "Everything is over." Uchiha Hideki smirked. "Are you finally going to act? Hurry up. I've been waiting impatiently for a long time." Clap, clap. Hyojin didn't answer. Instead, he lightly clapped his hands. Soon, the puppet dragged a person who was also covered in bruises to Hyojin. When Uchiha Hideki saw the injured person being dragged by the puppet, his indifferent expression finally changed, and he said in shock, "Ryota!" Hyojin said, "Yes, that's him." Uchiha Hideki roared angrily. "How dare you injure him to this state?" After so many days, this was the first time that Uchiha Hideki saw his brother, Uchiha Ryota. The anger that he had already forgotten instantly burst forth from his chest. At this time, Hyojin grabbed Uchiha Ryota's hair and dragged him in front of Uchiha Hideki and said slowly, "I am also tired of facing you two brothers. Today, I will give you a release." Uchiha Hideki, who had already disregarded life and death, stuttered, What do you want?" Hyojin took out a cold kunai and pressed it against Uchiha Ryota's throat. Why ask when you already know the answer? Don't you already know what I want to do? Uchiha Hideki said. Don't kill him. Hyojin ignored Uchiha Hideki and stabbed forward with the kunai. Puchi, blood spurted out from Uchiha Ryota's throat, splattering all over Uchiha Hideki's face. In almost an instant, Uchiha Hideki's eyes turned scarlet Sharingan, complementing the blood that splattered on his face, making his distorted face look like a bloodthirsty demon. Chapter 222. Uchiha Hideki's face was covered in blood, and his entire body was emitting a chilling aura. At this moment, it was as if he had really turned into a demon from hell. Hyojin quietly opened his Tenseigan and silently looked at Uchiha Hideki. In a vision of the Tenseigan, the chakra in Uchiha Hideki's body was violently fluctuating like a volcano erupting. The scarlet-red Sharingan was spinning rapidly, and it seemed like it was only one step away from the cursed Manjikyu Sharingan. At the same time, the four-symbol seal that Hyojin had placed on him seemed to have lost its effect. The originally clear and complete sealing techniques seemed to be attacked by some kind of inexplicable power. In the blink of an eye, many strange distortions appeared on the sealing techniques. Hyojin subconsciously frowned. Ever since he mastered the four-symbol seal, this was the first time he encountered such a situation. In the past, he had encountered a situation where the sealing techniques were forcefully attacked by a large amount of chakra. For example, when he opened the Dragon Vein seal that was sealed by 4 generations Naruto, the Dragon Vein used a large amount of chakra to attack the seal and forcibly destroyed the sealing techniques. But this kind of situation where chakra was used to distort the sealing techniques was something he had never heard of before. Feeling that the chakra in Uchiha Hideki's body was getting more and more violent and evil, Hyojin took a few steps back, and a look of anticipation appeared on his face. At this point, even if he didn't use the Tenseigan, Hyojin could clearly feel that Uchiha Hideki's pupil power was increasing rapidly. But at this moment, the chakra in Uchiha Hideki's body suddenly went berserk, and immediately a large amount of white foam came out of his mouth, and his body also began to twitch disorderly, as if he was having an epileptic fit. Not good. Thinking to himself, Hyojin immediately gave Uchiha Haichu a shot of tranquilizer. After being injected with a tranquilizer, Uchiha Haichu's body slowly calmed down, following which he fell into a deep coma, losing all senses of the outside world. Looking at the completely exhausted Uchiha Hideki, Hyojin sighed in disappointment. Powerful emotional stimulation could stimulate the potential of the Uchiha clansmen and open the treasury hidden in their genes. However, there was a limit to the endurance of each person's mind. No one could endure an unlimited amount of emotional stimulation, and once the limit was exceeded, a mental breakdown would be just around the corner. Haichu Uchiha was obviously on the verge of a mental breakdown. It was as if everyone had a sand value that symbolized rationality. Any negative emotions would cause the sand value to drop. Once the sand value reached 0, the person would completely lose their rationality and fall into a mental breakdown. Haichu Uchiha was unable to awaken his Manjikyu, Sharingan, even under the emotional stimulation that was enough to cause his mental breakdown. This undoubtedly shows that there's a certain gap between his aptitude and awakening the Manjikyu Sharingan. Clean up. After giving the order to the puppet beside him, Hyojin turned around and walked towards the office. The Uchiha Ryota that Hyojin killed in front of Uchiha Haichu just now was just a low-quality clone. It can't even be regarded as a living being. It's just a tool. If it weren't for the fact that Uchiha Haichu's mind was weak and was imprisoned by the four-symbol seal, it would have been very difficult for this clone to escape his perception. Because this low-quality clone doesn't have the true chakra of Uchiha Ryota, not to mention Uchiha Ryota's Samagatama Sharingan. The Sharingan is the eye of the soul, which requires mental power to awaken. So even if Hyojin can perfectly clone Uchiha Ryota's body, a clone without a soul will not be able to awaken even the San Magatama Sharingan. This is also the reason why, with the current cloning technology, whether it is Hyojin or Orochimaru, neither of them can create a real Sharingan or Byakugan. Coming to the office, Hyojin recorded the physical reaction of Uchiha Haichu just now in his notebook. After closing the notebook, Kuroto glanced at the clone of Uchiha Haichu placed on the side. Counting the Uchiha Ryota clone that was destroyed by Kuroto just now, these two Uchiha clones were forcibly cultivated by Kuroto with a large amount of nutrient solution in the last half a month, regardless of the cost. He doesn't know what went wrong, but in short, these two clones of Uchiha Shinobi are very low in completion. According to Hyojin standards, they are both defective products. Considering that Uchiha Ryota is much more cunning than Uchiha Haichu, Hyojin first used Uchiha Haichu as an experiment. Although the effect was very good, it still fell short in the end. Now, Hyojin can only pin all his hopes on Uchiha Ryota. Coming to the clone of Uchiha Haichu, Hyojin thought for a moment while drawing a lot of marks on the clone. Then he called the puppet over and said, "Create wounds according to the marks I drew." The puppet immediately followed Suejin's instructions and rigidly created a series of scars on the surface of the clone body. After a while, Uchiha Haichu's clone became full of wounds. Although these are all new wounds, due to the existence of medical ninjutsu in the world of shinobi, it is very common to treat the old wounds of prisoners and then repeatedly torture them, so Hyojin is not worried about being exposed. Circling around Uchiha Haichu's clone again, Hyojin always felt that something is wrong, but for a while, he couldn't tell what is wrong. Uchiha Ryota is very cunning, so he has no choice but to be cautious, so he didn't rush to act, but instead calmed down and thought about what made him feel that something is wrong. Suddenly, Hyojin's eyes stopped on the closed eyes of the clone, and he finally knew where the strange feeling in his heart came from. Immediately, Hyojin ordered the puppet dig out the eyes as well. The puppet immediately executed Hyojin's order and dug out the eyes of Uchiha Haichu's clone. After the clone body's tightly shut eyes turned into bloody eye sockets, the visual impact was increased by a lot, and the realism was also increased by a lot. Although Uchiha Ryota is shrewd and cunning, he is still Uchiha Ryota, and his nature is easily controlled by his emotions. Once his emotions go out of control, his judgment will inevitably be greatly reduced. After letting out a sigh of relief, Hyojin thought to himself, "Success or failure, it all depends on this." After saying that, he walked towards the cave where Uchiha Ryota was imprisoned. Chapter 223. As soon as he stepped into the cave where Uchiha Ryota was imprisoned, Hyojin felt a sinister gaze. It was a kind of resentment that could not wait to devour his flesh and blood. Hyojin did not care and casually said, "You seem to be in good spirits today." Ryota Uchiha said coldly, "I just heard Hideki's voice. It is meaningless for you to torture us like this. No matter what you really want, you will only get disappointed in the end." From this sentence, Uchiha Ryota had already revealed that he already knew why Hyojin wanted to torture and provoke them. Hyojin deliberately remained silent for a while, then said, "I really have no patience." Ryota Uchiha stared at Hyojin. "Is that so? Then give us brothers a quick death." Clap, clap. Hyojin clapped his hands. Not long after, the puppet dragged the scarred clone of Uchiha Hideki into the cave. In just an instant, Uchiha Ryota's attention was attracted by the two bloody holes in the eye sockets of Uchiha Hideki. In an instant, the veins on Uchiha Ryota's forehead bulged, and his whole face turned red with anger. There is no doubt that because his chakra was imprisoned by the four-symbol seal and his body was in a trance because of the long-term torture, coupled with the two eye-catching bloody holes in the eye sockets of the clone, Ryota Uchiha could not calm down at all. So he could not distinguish that the clone in front of him was just his brother Uchiha Hideki's clone. At this time, Hyojin said, "Your brother's Sharingan, I will accept it." Ryota Uchiha gritted his teeth and said hatefully, "You must also have your eyes on my Sharingan, don't talk nonsense. Hurry up and do it." With that, Uchiha Ryota's anger gradually subsided. His eyes also regained clarity, as if he had accepted his fate. Seeing that Uchiha Ryota was about to give up, Hyojin frowned. He suddenly realized that he had provoked Uchiha Ryota too crudely. Uchiha Ryota was the commander of the Uchiha clan's execution unit, which specialized in doing the dirty work. Therefore, death might not be much of a deterrent to him. In addition, after being imprisoned here for so many days, with his shrewdness, he should have understood that the two of them had no way to survive. Therefore, he had probably already mentally prepared himself for the two of them to die together. Once he was mentally prepared, even if Hyojin killed Uchiha Hideki in front of him, it would be difficult to provoke him. After realizing this, Kuroda understood that although he has made all kinds of preparations, but in the face of the cunning Uchiha Ryota, these preparations are still not foolproof. However, at this time, Uchiha Hideki's clone had already been displayed. He could no longer stop the stimulation experiment. Therefore, he picked up Uchiha Hideki's clone and approached Uchiha Ryota. He asked, "What do you think I should do with this piece of trash?" A flash of struggle flashed in Uchiha Ryota's eyes, but he quickly regained his determination. His gaze moved from Uchiha Hideki's clone to Hyojin Ryota, and then he did not say a word. Hyojin did not hesitate. He directly took out his kunai and cut the throat of Uchiha Hideki's clone. Blood splattered on Uchiha Ryota's face. Pucci, the sound of blood splattering reverberated in the silent cave, as if this was the only sound left in the entire world. To Hyojin's surprise, when the blood splattered on Uchiha Ryota's face, he didn't even blink, letting the blood splash on his face and stain his pupils red. His ink-colored eyes, stained with blood, flashed with a strange brilliance, giving off an extremely evil feeling. His face was expressionless, staring at Hyojin as if he wanted to engrave Hyojin's outline in his mind and imprint it into his soul. Under the ghostly mask, Hyojin's Tenseigan slowly opened. Through the careful observation of the Tenseigan, Hyojin found that the moment the blood splattered, the chakra in Uchiha Ryota's body did react violently. But this degree is obviously not enough to stimulate Uchiha Ryota to awaken his Manjikyu Sharingan. If the stimulation Uchiha Hideki suffered just now was close to the full score of 10, then the stimulation Uchiha Ryota suffered at this moment is probably less than 5. Sure enough, I failed. Hyojin remained unmoved on the surface, but he secretly sighed in his heart. This Uchiha Ryota repeatedly exceeded his expectations, making him a little uncomfortable, but he also had to admire him. He felt that if he was in such an environment, he would have already collapsed. Just when Hyojin converged his thoughts and accepted his failure, suddenly, his Tenseigan noticed an extremely subtle detail. He found that one of the 4-symbol seal that he applied on Uchiha Ryota's body had an almost imperceptible wear and tear. The worn seal was located at the back of Uchiha Ryota's waist. This position is in the blind spot of Hyojin's observation. Fortunately, Hyojin has the Tenseigan, so no detail can escape his eyes. Otherwise, he might not have been able to detect it. This wear and tear is not accidental. He is using the few chakra that he can mobilize to secretly wear down the seal on his body bit by bit. In just a moment, Hyojin reacted. Uchiha Ryota didn't completely give up as he showed on the surface. He is still trying to save himself in secret. Hyojin secretly smiled. He wanted to point out Uchiha Ryota's plot and make him completely give up, but when the words were about to come out of his mouth, he changed his mind at the last moment and did not say anything. He just signaled the puppet to bring the clone of Uchiha Ryota and then turned around and left the cave where Uchiha Ryota was imprisoned. Back in the office, Hyojin sorted out the progress of today's experiment in his mind and then took down the notebook from the bookshelf. After opening it, he hurriedly wrote, "Sorrow stimulation. All failed. Uchiha Ryota does not seem to have the qualifications to awaken the Manjikyu Sharingan. Stop all experiments on him. Uchiha Ryota is already psychologically prepared. Sorrow stimulation is extremely ineffective on him. Next step, despair, writing until here, the corner of Hyojin's mouth slightly curled up, forming an arc. When he noticed that Uchiha Ryota has not completely given up and is still trying to save himself, a plan flashed in Hyojin's mind. This plan may seem absurd, but it seems to be the right medicine to deal with people like Uchiha Ryota. Looking back at the dark cave, Hyojin murmured, "If I don't give you some hope, how can I create despair?" Chapter 224. In the Cave. Looking at Uchiha Hideki's clone body being dragged out of the cave, leaving a mottled bloodstain on the ground, Ryota's face gradually distorted. Kuroto's eyes were bloodshot, and his ink-black pupils turned scarlet as he shouted in his heart, "Brother, I will avenge you." Soon, a week has passed. In these days, Hyojin would go to the cave from time to time to observe Uchiha Ryota, and according to his observation, Uchiha Ryota is indeed wearing down the four-symbol seal in private, trying to escape. In this regard, Hyojin turned a blind eye to it, as if he didn't notice it at all. It's just that Uchiha Ryota is too careful. He only wears down a limited amount of the four-symbol seal every day. His progress is so slow that Hyojin can't wait. Looking at Uchiha Ryota's indifferent face, it seems that he has already accepted his fate. Hyojin rubbed his chin and thought. According to the progress of Uchiha Ryota, it will take at least 2 or 3 months for him to wear down the most critical four-symbol seal and remove it. During this time, the situation in the village is changing. No one can predict what direction the situation in the village will develop in 2 or 3 months, so Hyojin can't let Uchiha Ryota waste time like this. After a little thought, Hyojin had an idea and said to Uchiha Ryota, "I have something to do. I will go out for about 10 days. During this time, the puppet will change the nutrient solution for you." Uchiha Ryota didn't seem to hear Hyojin's words. There was no reaction on his face. He didn't even blink his eyelids. But there is no doubt that this is just Uchiha Ryota's disguise. In the vision of Hyojin's Tenseigan, as soon as he finished speaking, Uchiha Ryota's heartbeat rate changed significantly. Hyojin didn't expose her and pretended not to know anything. He continued, "When I come back this time, I'll be able to confirm whether you're dead or alive, so you don't have to worry too much. You'll soon be free and reunited with your brother." Uchiha Ryota's eyes flickered, but he still didn't say anything. Hyojin didn't say anything else, and simply left the cave. Glancing at Hyojin's departing figure, Uchiha Ryota's face turned gloomy. He thought to himself, only 10 days left. Back in his office, Hyojin sat in front of his desk and went over his plan again. After repeatedly confirming that there were no loopholes, he slowly got up and tidied up the office. In the final experiment 10 days later, the entire secret prison would become a part of the experiment. Therefore, he had to start setting up the venue and props now. Regardless of whether the final experiment would yield any results or not, the secret prison would be abandoned after the experiment. Therefore, he had to carefully clean up the traces he left in the secret prison to prevent others from following the clues. After completing the layout of the secret prison, Hyojin didn't stay idle. He quietly went to the secret laboratory in the Forest of Death. He stopped in front of a row of large nutrition tanks. At that moment, 2 clones were being cultivated in a row of large nutrition tanks. The 2 clones were Hyojin's own clones. However, they were not the clones that he had planned. Instead, they were ordinary clones that didn't have other people's cell tissues mixed in. They only had his own cell tissues. He went forward to check the data on the nutrition tank's display. Seeing that the data of the 2 clones were normal, Hyojin silently calculated the time in his heart. With Hyojin's current technology, it would take at least half a month to cultivate a clone. Kuroto started cultivating the 2 clones a week ago. If everything goes according to plan, these 2 clones should be able to make it in time for the final experiment 10 days later. Seeing that everything was going according to plan, Hyojin breathed a sigh of relief and immediately returned to Konoha. During this week, Konoha's encirclement and suppression of Amatsutsukami continued. However, the continuous investment of manpower and material resources didn't yield any results. It was as if the so-called Amitsukami never existed. This made more and more people in Konoha realize that something was wrong. All the signs indicated that Amitsukami has no substantial interaction with the underground black market and other ninja organizations scattered throughout the shinobi world. This Amitsukami seems to have suddenly appeared in the shinobi world and disappeared just like that. Because of the fruitless search, more and more people paid attention to the rumors spread by Danzo. Everyone began to speculate whether Homusubi, the only Uchiha who has a Manjikyu Sharingan, is Homusubi of Amitsukami, the only member of the Uchiha clan who has a Manjikyu Sharingan. And could the so-called Amitsukami be hiding in Konoha? As the rumors continued to ferment, 3 generations couldn't continue to sit back and do nothing. Soon, Hyojin received a call from 3 generations. After rushing to Naruto's office, Hyojin frowned slightly. At this time, in Naruto's office, not only Naruto of 3 generations, but also Danzo and the 3 elders of the advisory group. In addition, the patriarch of the Hyuga clan, Hyuga Hayashi, and one of the 3 Sannin, Jiraiya, were also there. What surprised Hyojin the most was the pale hair and beard squatting on the table next to Jiraiya. In Hyojin's impression, this toad was not simple. It should be Fukasaku sage of Mount Mayaboku, one of the 3 holy lands, whose status is second only to the great toad sage. Tisk, is there a need to make such a big fuss? After secretly cursing in his heart, Hyojin stepped forward and said to Naruto of 3 generations, Naruto-sama, member of Umbu Team 11, Hyojin, reporting to you. 3 generations removed the pipe in his mouth, which has become more and more inseparable recently, and said, This time, I called you here to ask you something. You must answer truthfully, without any concealment. Hyojin nodded calmly and said, Yes. 3 generations said, The night the leader of the Kumo delegation was attacked, what did you and Jishue do? How did you encounter the members of Amitsukami? This part, Hyojin and Jishue had already arranged, so he did not hesitate and immediately told the fabricated content in detail. After listening, everyone in the office was silent, seemingly looking for loopholes in Hyojin's words. Only Hyuga Hayashi stared at Hyojin with a bit of worry in his eyes. So far, only Hyojin, Jishue, and a few members of the family know that the leader of the Kumo delegation was killed by Hyuga Hayashi, so Hayashi is very worried that the rumors of Jishue will involve Hyojin. Chapter 225. While everyone was silent, Jiraiya suddenly asked Hyojin, Tell me in detail what happened when you were attacked. Kuroto then told Seong Jiraiya in detail about the attack that he had made up. Jiraiya nodded after listening and didn't say anything else. The content fabricated by Kuroto is all carefully considered by him, and any part that may arouse suspicion has been eliminated by him one by one. As for the parts that were difficult to explain, he pushed all the blame to the members of Amitsukami being very strong and having strange abilities. Anyway, even 3 generations Naruto couldn't catch the members of Amitsukami, so no one could blame him for shirking responsibility like this. After a moment of silence, 3 generations asked tentatively, That night, did Jishue do anything strange? Hokage-sama, I have also heard the rumors in the village, but I personally think that those rumors are pure nonsense and not worth discussing at all, said Suijin in a very natural manner. Hokage-sama, I have also heard the rumors in the village, but I personally think that those rumors are pure nonsense and not worth discussing. Danzo snorted. Arrogant. How can you make such an assertion? Hyojin said, If Jishue is a member of Amitsukami, then how can you explain Amitsukami's recent attack on the Uchiha clan? Danzo casually said, This is probably just a self-directed performance by the Uchiha clan. If this is a self-directed performance by the Uchiha clan, then it means that Amitsukami and the Uchiha clan are in cahoots, or Amitsukami was established by the Uchiha clan. Hyojin smiled and asked, Then why did Amitsukami take the risk of smuggling the body out of the village after killing the leader of the Kumo delegation? Isn't this unnecessary? Danzo opened his mouth, but was unable to answer Hyojin's question, and could only snort coldly. The question that Hyojin asked was something that all the higher-ups of Mai were puzzled about. Judging from the fact that Amatsukomi ambushed the leader of the Kumo envoys and smuggled his body out of the village and sent it to the black market, Amatsukomi's purpose was very clear. They were after the 50 million yuan bounty on the head of the leader of the Kumo envoys. If Amatsukomi's organization was determined as such, the Uchiha clan would naturally be clear of suspicion. After all, as a wealthy Mai clan, the Uchiha clan would never do something so outrageous just for a mere 50 million black market bounty. Even Danzo, who was extremely hostile towards Uchiha, did not think that Uchiha would do such a ridiculous thing. 3 Generations waved his hand and said, "All right, you can leave first." Hyojin gently nodded, then quietly left Naruto's office. After Hyojin left, 3 Generations asked the people in Naruto's office, "What do you think?" Hyuga Hayashi was the first to stand up. "I think that Kuroto and Jishuei are reliable. It is unwise to suspect the outstanding juniors of the village just because of some groundless rumors." Sage Fukusaku, who was standing beside Jiraiya, said, "I just sense that this little guy named Hyojin didn't have any emotional fluctuations throughout the whole process. It doesn't seem like he was lying." Danzo said, "Hyojin may not be lying, but he may have been deceived by Jishuei. You should also know that Jishuei, who possesses the Manjikyu Sharingan, is far stronger than Hyojin. Can Hyojin's Byakugan see through the falsehood created by Jishuei?" Danzo's words made everyone in the room fall into silence. Perhaps everyone's impression of the Manjikyu Sharingan had faded a little, but after Uchiha and Shinichi made a scene in Mai, the terrifying power that made Uchiha's Sharingan comparable to that of Naruto's first generation once again appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Everyone realized that once Uchiha's people awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan, their strength would take a qualitative leap, and they would be able to do many things that seemed impossible. Seeing that no one refuted him, Danzo sneered again. "I even suspect that Hyojin has been controlled by Jishuei's Jinjutsu." Fukusaku shook his head and said with a serious look on his face, "The chakra in Hyojin's body is very peaceful. In short, the chakra in his body shows no signs of interference." Hyuga Hayashi also echoed, "Yes, the mirror is not controlled by Jinjutsu, and the feedback from the Cagebird curse is normal." The 3 Generations breathed a sigh of relief. "That's good." The 3 Generations didn't want to intensify the conflict between the village and Uchiha at this time. After all, the sudden appearance of Amatsukomi and the Akatsuki who recruited a large number of Mai's renegades are a greater threat to the village. According to the intelligence of the Konoha village, there is only one possessor of Manjikyu Sharingan in the Uchiha clan, and the Akatsuki organization not only has Uchiha Shinichi, who also possesses Manjikyu Sharingan, but there is also Orochimaru, one of the Sannin, as well as a large number of S-class renegades, including Sasori, Kakuzu, and Hiriko. In terms of high-level combat power alone, the Akatsuki organization is not inferior to the 5 great shinobi villages. At this time, the 3 Generations looked at Zhuan Shao-chun and asked, "Did you find anything in the Sand Crypsis?" Mai and the Sand Crypsis have now formed an alliance, so in the investigation of Amatsukomi, Mai also sent a request to the Sand Crypsis for cooperation. Zhuan Shao-chun took out a document and handed it to the 3 Generations while saying, "The situation in the Sand Crypsis is not good." As soon as the 3 Generations took the document and looked at it, their brows furrowed. After the 3 Generations fought with Sasori, Mai reported Sasori's situation to the Sand Crypsis as their ally. In fact, many people in the Sand Crypsis have suspected that the disappearance of the 3 Generations Kazekage is related to Sasori, but because Sasori is the grandson of Elder Chiyo of the Sand Crypsis, and because there is no evidence in their hands, this matter has been delayed for a long time. Now that they know that Sasori has joined the Akatsuki organization, and there is a rumor that he killed 3 Generations Kazekage, The excuse of lack of evidence can no longer be concealed. 3 generations Kazakage were killed. Even if it is just to regain face, the Sand Crypsis has to respond accordingly. So they quickly formed a large hunting team to hunt down Sasori. It is unknown whether it is a coincidence or someone deliberately did it. As soon as the Sand Crypsis formed a hunting team, Sasori received information from the spy he placed around Orochimaru, saying that Orochimaru is hiding in the country of wind. So Sasori, Kakashi, Hiriko, Shino, and several other Akatsuki members rushed to the country of wind. The result is self-evident. The Sand Crypsis hunting team and the Akatsuki organization met in the yellow sand, and a fierce battle broke out. In the end, the Akatsuki members were forced to retreat, and the Sand Crypsis hunting team suffered heavy losses and was unable to continue the pursuit. Slamming the document on the table, the 3 generations' face was gloomy. After the Sand Crypsis also fell at the hands of the Bounty Ninja organization. The prestige of the 5 great ninja villages is being trampled by Amatsuki, Akatsuki, and other bounty ninja organizations. Chapter 226. Back home, Hyojin found a black crow on his windowsill, so he opened the window and let the crow into the house. Taking the letter tube from the crow's leg, Hyojin opened the letter. The letter was written by Jishui, and the letter briefly mentioned his situation this week, and also mentioned that many people in the Uchiha clan also listened to the rumors outside and became suspicious of him. After destroying the letter, Hyojin lightly spat. TSK, it seems that I underestimated the power of rumors. In fact, Kuroto also understands that the main reason why this rumor was able to spread like wildfire in the village is that the disappearance of Amatsuki was too strange, and the search of the village was fruitless, so it was inevitable for the villagers to think too much about it. In this kind of atmosphere, naturally, more people believe the rumors. In fact, to solve this problem is actually very simple, as long as the Balrog of Amatsuki makes a high-profile appearance, and let the leaders of the village and the Uchiha clan believe that there is indeed such a bounty ninja organization, then all the problems will be solved. But how to create another Balrog has become a difficult problem in front of Hyojin. Putting away his thoughts, Hyojin wrote a reply and put it in the letter tube on the crow's leg. The content of his letter was only 2 words: endure. Then he stretched out his hand and held the crow out of the window, watching it fly away. Outside the Uchiha clan, 2 root ninjas stood on a big tree, watching the Uchiha clan from afar. At this time, one of the root ninjas said, "Look, it's the crow that flew out just now." The other root ninja observed for a while and said, "This crow is not right. Shoot it down." Swish! The root ninja who found the crow immediately shot a sharp senbon and hit the crow in the air. When the 2 root ninjas arrived at the place where the crow fell, suddenly, the crow's body on the ground burst into a cloud of white smoke. When the smoke dissipated, only a black feather was left on the ground. After picking up the black feather, the 2 root ninjas looked at each other. In Jishui's home, after taking the letter tube from the crow's leg, Jishui hurriedly opened the letter and read it. Then, she asked in confusion, "Patience. Could it be that Senior has a way to help me get rid of suspicion?" Time flew, and soon 9 days had passed. These days, Hyojin has been secretly spying on Uchiha Ryota's every move in the secret prison through the Tenseigan through the thick rock layer. Uchiha Rontai did not disappoint him. In just a short 9 days, he had already worn down most of the key sealing techniques of the 4-symbol seal on his body. According to this progress, he should be able to escape tonight. Hyojin paused, then muttered, "Success or failure depends on tonight." As the sun set in the west, the sky gradually darkened. In the cave, Uchiha Ryota closed his eyes, concentrating on controlling the chakra to wear down the sealing techniques that imprisoned him. After these days of hard work, while wearing down the sealing techniques, he unexpectedly found that his control over chakra had improved a lot. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. I didn't expect that this method could also train the control of chakra. It's really absurd. At this time, a squeaking sound came into the cave. Hearing the sound, Uchiha Ryota immediately stopped wearing down the sealing techniques, calmed down all the chakra reactions on his body, and pretended to be asleep. He knew that this sound came from the puppet that changed the nutrient solution for him every day. At first, he thought that there was a puppet master hiding in the cave, secretly controlling the puppet. But after careful observation these days, he found that the puppet's body was not connected to any chakra lines at all. This discovery astounded him to no end. As an elite jonin who had experienced the Third Ninja World War, Uchiha Ryota was no stranger to the puppet masters of the Sancrypsis and the various puppets of the Sancrypsis. Therefore, he could recognize the puppet in front of him at a glance. It was just a standard puppet of the middle and low-level puppet masters of the Sancrypsis, and there was nothing special about it. Even the Uchiha clan, who was not too interested in puppets, had seized a lot of them in the war. Although they were not trash that could be found on the street, they did not have much value as a collector's item. It was also because he knew the origin of this type of puppet that he was shocked by the puppet in front of him, which obviously had a certain level of intelligence and could complete tasks independently. Not long after changing the nutrient solution to maintain Uchiha Ryota's life, the puppet slowly left the cave. Looking at the puppet's departing figure, Uchiha Ryota said, "Is this a new technology developed by the village?" In the blink of an eye, Uchiha Ryota suppressed all the doubts and puzzlement in his heart about this puppet and focused his mind to think about his escape plan. He knew very well that if nothing unexpected happened, he would be able to remove the shackles of the four-symbol seal in a few hours. Once the shackles of the four-symbol seal were gone, a few mere chains would not be able to trap the elite jonin of Uchiha, who could freely mobilize the chakra in his body. Other than that strange puppet, I wonder if there are any other guards in this cave. Ryota Uchiha had speculated about his situation. Although he firmly believed that the one who attacked him was all the higher-ups of the village, he felt that the one who tortured him should be one of the higher-ups in the village who coveted the Sharingan of Uchiha. That was why the whole torture seemed so mysterious and sneaky. It was precisely because of this speculation that he felt that the guards in this cave should not be too strong. At least, there would not be a strong person at the level of Jishui. And the reason why the arrogant him was worried about the guards was because of the long-term torture, coupled with the fact that his body had only ingested some nutrient solution that could barely sustain his life these days, causing his body to be very weak at this time. Once the guards in the cave were too strong, even if he broke the seal, it would be difficult for him to escape. Time passed by, and as the seals were worn down one by one, the hope of getting out of this predicament was right in front of him. Even Uchiha Ryota, who has a heart of stone, couldn't help but get excited at this moment. However, at this moment, he heard the sound of familiar footsteps. That guy's back. Damn it, this is only the 9th day. A series of emotions such as surprise, anger, and annoyance surged in Ryota Uchiha's heart, but there was nothing he could do. He could only stop wearing down the sealing techniques again. After a while, a figure wearing a devil mask appeared in the cave and said to him, "Okay, the higher-ups have made a decision. Tonight is the day you die." Chapter 227. Just a little bit more, just a little bit more. Ryota Uchiha's heart seemed to be hiding a beast, roaring angrily. The blood feud with his brother Uchiha Hideki, the torture and humiliation he has suffered these past few days, all these resentment and unwillingness piled up in his heart, giving birth to a ferocious beast, a beast that feeds on hatred, a beast that lives by killing and slaughtering. The man with the grimace mask didn't seem to notice the change in Ryota Uchiha's mood, and still said slowly, "When you die, I will be relieved." Uchiha Ryota, who was not willing to wait for Kuroto to kill him, secretly accelerated the consumption of the jutsu and said, "Can I ask you a favor?" The man with the grimace mask was stunned for a moment, and then said with a chuckle, "Say it. What is it?" Ryota Uchiha intentionally pondered for a long time, and then slowly said, "I want to be buried with my brother." The man with the grimace mask shrugged. "I'm sorry, Your brother's body has been disposed of after you die. Your body will also be disposed of, so I'm afraid I can't help you with this request." Hearing that his brother Uchiha Hideki had no bones left, Ryota, who was as experienced as Uchiha, couldn't suppress the anger in his heart, and his whole body couldn't help but tremble. The man with the grimace mask saw this and said, "Hey, are you trembling with fear? I thought you were not afraid of death." Ryota, Uchiha raised his head and stared at the man with the grimace mask. "Someone will die here tonight." The man with the grimace mask smiled and said, "Yes, the person who will die is you. This is something that is destined. No one can change it." After that, the man with the grimace mask turned around and walked to a tool table, took out a set of delicate surgical tools. While disinfecting the tools, he said with a smile, "By the way, do you think I should take off your Sharingan first, or kill you first, and then take off your Sharingan from your body?" Staring at the man with the grimace mask whose back was facing him, Uchiha said coldly, "Is there any difference?" The masked man teased, "There are still some differences. At least when you are alive, you can take off your Sharingan. The Sharingan will be more or less fresh. There's only one last sealing technique left. I'll be able to take my revenge soon. I'll be able to kill him soon. I want to kill him. Kill him. Kill him." After wearing down another sealing technique, Uchiha Ryota exclaimed in his heart. At this moment, he was already slightly unable to suppress the wild beast of slaughter at the bottom of his heart. In his nervousness and excitement, his entire body trembled more and more violently, and he fell into an indescribable madness. The man with the grimace mask, who had his back to Uchiha Ryota, seemed to have no idea of this. He was still cleaning the surgical tools and teasing Ryota, as if Uchiha Ryota, who was tied behind him, was already a meat on the chopping board and a fish in the pot. Not long after, the man with the grimace mask turned around, holding a scalpel in one hand and a pair of surgical forceps in the other. He came to Uchiha Ryota and said in an almost announcing tone, "Uchiha Ryota, I'll take your Sharingan." The corners of Uchiha Ryota's mouth rose slightly. "Come and get it." The man with the grimace mask was unmoved, and the surgical forceps and scalpel in his hand slowly approached Uchiha Ryota's eyes. Just as the cold surgical instruments were about to touch Uchiha Ryota's eyeballs, suddenly, Uchiha Ryota's ink-colored eyes turned into scarlet Sharingan. "This?" The man with the grimace mask was taken aback, and the movements of his hands also stopped. At this time, the three tomo in Uchiha Ryota's Sharingan eyes rotated rapidly, and at the same time, with a clatter sound, the chains that bound him all slipped to the ground. The man with the grimace mask no longer hesitated this time, and flew back. The freed Uchiha Ryota almost instantly completed the hand seal, and shouted to the man with the grimace mask, "Fire release! Grand fire annihilation!" Boom! In an instant, a sea of fire spewed out from the mouth of Uchiha Ryota, and in the blink of an eye, it filled the narrow cave. In such a narrow and closed environment, using the level of grand fire annihilation was almost equivalent to suicide from a certain point of view, and they experienced Uchiha Ryota's first move after escaping was this ninjutsu, which showed how strong the killing intent in his heart was. At the moment when the grand fire annihilation was used, not only did Uchiha Ryota not dodge or escape, but he jumped into the sea of fire, enduring the burning flames, and directly rushed to the man with the grimace mask, who was also in the sea of fire. Bang, bang, bang. In an instant, accompanied by the sound of fists and feet, the two men were entangled in the sea of fire. Uchiha Ryota seemed to be crazy, completely ignoring the flames, and rushed to the key points of the man with the grimace mask and roared, "Die! Die! Die!" The man with the grimace mask was burned by the fire release ninjutsu, and could only barely resist the crazy attack of Uchiha Ryota. Soon, he fell into a disadvantage and was forced into a corner. Uchiha Ryota, who had the upper hand, had completely fallen into madness. He pierced the chest of the man with the grimace mask with one hand, as if he was going to tear the heart of the man with the grimace mask with his bare hands. The man with the grimace mask shouted, "You damn madman!" Swoosh! Immediately, there was a sound of wind breaking. The man with the grimace mask pulled out a sharp short sword from his waist, and with a wave of his hand, he cut off the arm of Uchiha Ryota that had pierced into his chest. One arm was cut off, but Uchiha Ryota turned a deaf ear. He rushed directly to the man with the grimace mask, bit the throat of the man with the grimace mask, and tore the throat of the man with the grimace mask. Puff! Blood splashed from the throat of the man with the grimace mask, sprinkling on the surrounding flames, and a colorful halo appeared. Then, the man with the grimace mask fell straight to the ground, and soon there was no breath. Watching the man with the grimace mask die in front of him, the three Magatama on Uchiha Ryota's Sharingan rotated even faster, and at first glance, it seemed that they were connected. Huff! At this time, Uchiha Ryota's killing intent gradually faded, and endless fatigue and pain suddenly rushed up, causing him to fall to the ground and gasp. As the killing intent faded, the three Magatama in his Sharingan, which was about to be completely connected, gradually separated and returned to the original appearance of three Magatama. At this moment, Ryota Uchiha also noticed the changes in his Sharingan, and realized that just now, at the moment when he killed his enemy, he almost awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan that he had dreamed of. However, it was still just a little bit. Chapter 228. Pui. After spitting out a mouthful of blood, Uchiha Ryota struggled to stand up. He had just used the fire release Grand Fire Annihilation, and he had taken a solid hit himself. So at this moment, not only did he lose an arm, but his body was also heavily burned. Even with the physique of an elite Jonin, this degree of injury was almost at the limit of what Uchiha Ryota could bear. At this time, Uchiha Ryota half-squatted in front of the corpse of the Grimace Masked Man and reached out to remove the Grimace Mask. The face under the Grimace Mask was quickly revealed, and Uchiha Ryota's eyes suddenly darkened. So it's a colleague of the Jishue Umbu. I think his name is Hyojin. Hyuga family, I'll remember this grudge. Then, Uchiha Ryota's gaze fell on the sharp short sword in Hyojin's hand. This is a good sword. After praising it, Uchiha Ryota smoothly fastened it to his waist. After killing his enemy and confirming his enemy's identity, Uchiha Ryota only had one thought left at the moment, and that was to find his brother Uchiha Hideki's Sharingan as soon as possible and then quickly leave this place. So he stood up, dragged his exhausted body, and staggered out of the cave where he was imprisoned. From the beginning to the end, he did not even look at the broken arm on the ground. Along the dark passage, he came to a room brightly lit by candlelight. There were tables, chairs, and benches in the room, and there were books, pens, and ink on the table. Just from the furnishings, Uchiha Ryota could tell that this should be Hyojin's office. Coming to the desk, Uchiha Ryota's eyes immediately fell on the notebook on the table with Uchiha Ryota written on the cover. With an indescribable feeling, Uchiha opened his notebook. The notebook recorded every stimulation experiment that Hyojin conducted on Uchiha Ryota. It even included some of Hyojin's comments and speculations. Looking at the incomparably cold words in the notebook, Uchiha Ryota, who was being tested and toyed with, suddenly fell into a boundless rage. Rustle, amidst the sound of breaking wind, cold light flashed, and sword chi crisscrossed. The enraged Uchiha Ryota waved the sharp short sword he had seized from Hyojin and cut the notebook and the desk into pieces. While panting heavily, Kuroto thought to himself, they actually wanted to use this method to stimulate me to awaken my Manjikyu Sharingan. No wonder they didn't kill me. It turns out that what they coveted was the Manjikyu Sharingan of our Uchiha clan. After reading the notebook, Uchiha Ryota knew everything. Although he had some vague guesses before, everything about the Manjikyu Sharingan. Even he, as an Uchiha clan member, didn't know much about it, so he couldn't determine what the other party's motive was. It wasn't until he saw the stimulation experiment project in the notebook that he understood that the purpose of the other party was not just the 3 Tomo Sharingan in his and his brother's eye sockets. What the other party really wanted was a pair of Manjikyu Sharingan. Brother, I swear to you, I will definitely find all the people behind the scenes and then kill them one by one with my own hands. After making the oath in his heart, Uchiha Ryota left the room. At this time, he knew very well that with his current physical condition, he had to evacuate, but if he didn't find his brother Uchiha Hideki's Sharingan, he couldn't convince himself to leave. So he continued to move forward along the dark passage. His steps were heavy but extremely firm. At the end of the passage, there was a door engraved with the Uchiha clan's emblem. Bright candlelight shone through the gap of the door, indicating the light behind the door. Why is the family emblem engraved on the door? Uchiha Ryota was a little puzzled, but then he thought, is that the secret vault where our Uchiha clan Sharingan is stored? Thinking of this, he quickened his pace and walked to the door. But just when he was about to push the door, he suddenly took a step back and pulled out the short sword from his waist again. At this time, although Uchiha Ryota was seriously injured and exhausted, as an elite jonin of the Uchiha clan who is only one step away from awakening the Manjikyu Sharingan, his perception is unquestionable. At the moment when he pushed the door, he keenly felt the sound of breathing and heartbeat behind the door. This undoubtedly means that there is someone in the room behind the door, and for some reason, the other person give him a very familiar feeling, but this familiarity is mixed with some strangeness, which makes him feel very strange. After a short moment of hesitation, Uchiha Ryota made up his mind, kicked the door open, and rushed into the room. The room was brightly lit, forming a strong contrast with the dark cave before. Even with the 3 Tomo Sharingan, Uchiha Ryota blinked uncomfortably and subconsciously reached out to cover part of the light. At this time, a flat and cold voice sounded in the room. Ryota, you can find this place. You really did not disappoint me. Hearing the familiar voice, Uchiha Ryota was shocked and blurted out, Brother? At this time, Uchiha Ryota's eyes still haven't adapted to the strong light in the room. He can only vaguely see a gorgeous high-back chair in the room, with its back facing him, and the voice just now seems to come from the chair. Just as Uchiha Ryota was trying to adapt to the strong light in the room, the high-back chair turned around. Seeing the person sitting on the high-back chair, Uchiha Ryota's pupils constricted. The arm that was holding the short sword slowly drooped down. The person sitting on the high-back chair is none other than his brother, Uchiha Hideki. Uchiha Hideki was wearing the eye-catching black cloak of Amatsuki. He wasn't wearing a mask, and he was sitting lazily on a high-back chair with a leisurely expression on his face. Uchiha Ryota asked, Why? His voice was so soft that it was almost inaudible, as if he wasn't asking Uchiha Hideki in front of him, but asking his own soul. Uchiha Hideki, who was sitting on the high-back chair, said lightly, My stupid brother, do you still not understand? Uchiha Ryota looked at Uchiha Hideki. I'm asking you why. This time his voice was louder, but his tone was still full of hesitation and helplessness. Uchiha Hideki smiled faintly and explained, The secret to activating the Manjikyu Sharingan is extreme love and hatred. I know that you love me, so you will sacrifice your Manjikyu Sharingan for me, right? Uchiha Ryota stepped back and shook his head. No, you're not Hideki. He would not do this to me. At this time, Uchiha Hideki, who was sitting on the high-back chair, slowly closed his eyes. Suddenly, he opened them, and the Sharingan, the symbol of the Uchiha clan, appeared in his eye sockets. Chapter 229. Looking at the 3 Tomo Sharingan in Uchiha Hideki's eye sockets, feeling the familiar chakra on Uchiha Hideki's body, although Ryota also vaguely noticed a trace of incongruity. But there is no doubt that the person sitting in front of him is his brother, Uchiha Hideki. This feeling of blood connection, even if Uchiha Ryota is seriously injured and exhausted at the moment, he will never mistake it for someone else. And because he confirmed this, Uchiha Ryota staggered back a few steps. His face was full of disbelief. Along the way, he relied on the belief of avenging his brother Hideki to support him. But at this moment, this belief that has been supporting him all this time suddenly collapsed. On the high back chair, Uchiha Hideki smiled and said, "What's wrong? Is it difficult to accept all this?" Uchiha Hideki's tone was full of ridicule, as if they were talking about daily trifles, such as what to eat for breakfast. Uchiha Ryota was a little lost. Why did you do this?" Uchiha Hideki took a deep look at Uchiha Ryota's eyes and said, "Didn't I tell you just now? I need your Man-GQ Sharingan. You tortured me like this just for that illusory Man-GQ Sharingan?" With a sad smile, Uchiha Ryota continued, "I'm afraid I have to disappoint you. I don't have that talent. I can't awaken the Man-GQ Sharingan you need. You can only rely on your own ability." Uchiha Hideki smiled slightly. "Awakening the Man-GQ Sharingan is not difficult for me." Uchiha Ryota roared. "Then why do you still torture me like this?" Uchiha Hideki's eyes flashed and said solemnly, "Because the Man-GQ Sharingan is not the end of Uchiha Sharingan. What I need is power that surpasses the Man-GQ Sharingan. A power that surpasses the Man-GQ Sharingan." Uchiha Ryota was very surprised. The feeling of having his own ideas attacked made him at a loss. After a while, he roared hysterically, "There is no power above the Man-GQ Sharingan. The Man-GQ Sharingan is the ultimate power." Uchiha Hideki looked at Ryota with a pitiful expression and shook his head. "My stupid brother, your narrow-minded vision has limited your life and future. Maybe what you said is right. For a mediocre clansman like you, the Man-GQ Sharingan is indeed the limit. But for me, the Man-GQ Sharingan is just the beginning of everything." Uchiha Ryota roared, "I don't understand what you're saying. You're crazy." Uchiha Hideki, who was sitting on the high-back chair, pondered for a moment before asking, "Do you know about the eternal Man-GQ Sharingan?" Uchiha Ryota, who heard this term for the first time, was a little confused. Eternal Man-GQ Sharingan? Uchiha Hideki continued, "The various rumors about the Man-GQ Sharingan in the outside world are not all nonsense. It is indeed a cursed power, because once the Man-GQ Sharingan is awakened, the clansman who awakens the Man-GQ Sharingan will go blind irreversibly and fall into complete darkness." Uchiha Ryota was shocked. "The Man-GQ Sharingan can cause blindness?" "Yes, the more frequently you use the Man-GQ Sharingan, the faster you will go blind." After a pause, Uchiha Hideki continued, "There is only one way to reverse the blindness and obtain the eternal pupillary power." Uchiha Ryota, who had guessed something, was shocked and angry at the moment. "The method you're talking about is to take my eyes?" At this time, Uchiha Hideki showed a crazy expression. "Yes, as long as I replace the Man-GQ Sharingan of my blood relatives and fuse the power of the two pairs of Man-GQ Sharingan that are connected by blood, I can obtain the true eternal pupillary power, obtain the eternal Man-GQ Sharingan that will never go blind, and control the fate of the Uchiha clan." So that's how it is. Uchiha Ryota, who knew everything, sat on the ground. His eyes were dull, as if he had lost his focus. If before, Kuroto only thought that Uchiha Hideki had gone mad or was being manipulated by someone using some strange method, then after learning the secret of the Man-GQ Sharingan, he finally understood why Uchiha Hideki would set such a big trap. For a short moment, he even asked himself in his heart, in the face of the temptation of the eternal Man-GQ Sharingan, would he also reach out to his blood relatives like his brother? Uchiha Hideki continued his speech full of hope. "Ryota, my dear brother, you are the one who is most likely to open the Man-GQ Sharingan in the clan, and you are also my blood relative. You will definitely help me, right?" Sitting on the ground, Ryota, Uchiha Hideki asked in a surprisingly calm tone, "Brother, will you really dig out my eyes?" When Uchiha Hideki heard Uchiha Hideki's desperate question, his whole body seemed to be struck by lightning, and his expression was dull for a few seconds. But he immediately recovered, but the expression on his face was distorted. One moment it was shock and surprise. The next moment it was anger and sadness. It was as if there were two personalities in his body at the same time. Not hearing Uchiha Hideki's answer, Ryota Uchiha Hideki continued to say, "My question is ridiculous, right? It's so ridiculous that you don't even want to answer it. If Uchiha Hideki raised his head at this time, he would find that Uchiha Hideki on the high back chair was pressing his right hand with his left hand, and some parts of his body were trembling uncontrollably, as if he was trying to suppress something, but also as if he was trying to break through something. Ryota Uchiha Hideki, who was still lowering his head, suddenly laughed wildly. He covered his eyes with one hand, and the chakra on his body became gloomy and indescribable. At this moment, even a blind person could feel that Ryota Uchiha's aura had changed dramatically. Looking at the desperate and sad Ryota Uchiha Hideki on the high-back chair couldn't help but shed 2 lines of blood tears, and the 3 Magatama in his Sharingan flew out and rotated, faintly gathering together. Suddenly, Ryota Uchiha Hideki's crazy laughter stopped abruptly, and he suddenly raised his head. The Sharingan in his eye sockets had changed into a complex polygonal shape. It was unknown whether it was a coincidence or a resonance, but it happened almost at the same time. The 3 Magatama in Uchiha Hideki's Sharingan, which was flowing tears of blood, also changed into a complex triangle in an instant. Boom, boom, boom. Accompanied by a loud roar, 2 Orangelo Susanoo stood up at the same time. The dark and narrow cave couldn't withstand the destruction of 2 Susanoo, and in the midst of the earthquake, Hyojin's secret prison completely collapsed. Chapter 230. Boom! In an instant, a violent whirlwind swept through the cave, accompanied by an earth-shattering sound. The originally sturdy walls of the cave collapsed inch by inch. The collapse of the cave raised a cloud of smoke and dust. Amidst the smoke and dust and scattered stone debris, Suijin, who had returned to the body of the true body, gradually narrowed his eyes. Looking at the 2 Susanoo, that were very similar in appearance and color, the expression on his face was extremely complicated. There was surprise, and a little emotion on his face. I really didn't expect this. This scene was indeed a bit out of Hyojin's expectations. Uchiha Hideki, who was on the verge of mental collapse and had long been judged by Hyojin to not have the talent to awaken the Manjikyu Sharingan, actually forcefully expelled Hyojin's soul from his body. This was the first time that Hyojin tasted the feeling of being forcibly expelled from his body when he used the Tenseigan soul descending technique. Before this, Uchiha Hideki was on the verge of mental collapse and had fallen into a deep coma, losing all senses of the outside world, almost becoming a vegetable. Therefore, Hyojin had the idea of using the soul descending technique to control him and complete the last round of stimulation on Uchiha Ryota. But he never thought that when he saw Uchiha Ryota's miserable figure, Uchiha Hideki's consciousness that had fallen into a deep sleep actually woke up without any warning. Not only that, under the suppression of Hyojin's will, Uchiha Hideki actually tried to forcefully awaken the Sharingan. That's right, when Hyojin controlled Uchiha Hideki to talk to Uchiha Ryota, Uchiha Hideki suddenly opened the Sharingan. It was not Hyojin's doing. The situation at that time was that Uchiha Hideki's will had been trying to open the Sharingan, and Hyojin's was trying his best to suppress it. But after hearing Uchiha Ryota's question about Uchiha Hideki's true identity, Hyojin thought for a while and immediately removed the suppression on Uchiha Hideki's will, allowing Uchiha Hideki to open the Sharingan. This action confirmed to Uchiha Ryota that Uchiha Hideki's identity, dispelling Uchiha Ryota's last doubt, and made Uchiha Hideki fall into despair. But with the opening of the Sharingan, in the confrontation with Hyojin Ryota's consciousness, Uchiha Ryota's will gradually gain the upper hand and regain some control of his body. This was also why Uchiha Hideki, who was sitting on the high-back chair, acted strangely, his expression twisted, and his left hand pressed on his right hand, as if he was competing with himself. That was because Hyojin's will and Uchiha Hideki's were having an intense battle of wills within Uchiha Hideki's body. In the end, out of love for his brother, Uchiha Hideki, who was on the verge of a mental breakdown, burned all of his potential and forcefully awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan, successfully expelling Hyojin's will from his body. Roar! Roar! At this time, two Susanoo of similar color and appearance roared angrily at each other at the same time. Ryota Uchiha, who only had one arm left, held his forehead with one hand and panted heavily as he said, "Brother, so I've been living in your lies all this time. Your aptitude is actually far above mine. I'm a so-called family genius, but I'm just a complete joke." Uchiha Hideki, who had just regained control of his body, tried to open his mouth, trying to explain something, but his mouth could only make yeah sounds. There is no doubt that he hasn't completely regained control of his body yet. Coupled with the battle of wills he just had and forcefully awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan. At this time, his mental strength has reached its limit. Seeing Uchiha Hideki half kneeling on the ground under the Susanoo, seemingly adapting to the power of the Manjikyu Sharingan, Ryota said coldly, "Actually, you are the real genius. You are the real genius. You didn't lie. Awakening the Manjikyu Sharingan is really a piece of cake for you." At this time, Uchiha Hideki struggled to stand up and said in a very strange tone, "Ryota, be careful. Be careful." Uchiha Ryota snorted coldly and said, "Be careful of what? Be careful of being dug out by you? Come, whoever wins between us two brothers will have eternal light. If I lose, I will give you my Manjikyu Sharingan." Uchiha Ryota knew that with his current physical state, the possibility of winning is very small, but even if there is no chance of winning, he has to fight. This is his last stubbornness. After saying that, Uchiha Ryota used his Susanoo and punched towards Uchiha Hideki's Susanoo. Boom! The earth shook again, gravel splashed everywhere, smoke and dust flew. With just one punch, Uchiha Hideki's Susanoo was knocked down to the ground, and the figure of the Susanoo also became a bit illusory, and it seemed that it would be difficult to maintain its form. As if noticing something, Uchiha Ryota frowned and asked, "No, why is your chakra so weak?" Uchiha Ryota was physically weak and seriously injured. He was almost out of energy, but after one blow, he found that his brother Uchiha Hideki's chakra was even weaker than his. This made him suspicious. Uchiha Hideki has completely controlled his body at this time, and while gasping heavily, he explained, "Ryota, stop, we are all being played." Although Uchiha Ryota was skeptical, but because of his long-term trust in his brother, he stopped attacking. Uchiha Hideki looked around vigilantly, and then explained, "The other party has a very strong Jinjutsu that can control my body. I barely regained control of my body after awakening the Manjikyu Sharingan. Be careful, he should still be nearby." Uchiha Ryota also immediately became vigilant when he heard this. With his Manjikyu Sharingan, he can easily distinguish that his brother Uchiha Hideki's weakness is not an act. So he instantly understood that both he and his brother have been played. Kuroto's main body was nearby, so Uchiha Hideki and Uchiha Ryota were able to quickly find his trail with the help of the Manjikyu Sharingan. Hyojin walked out of the ruins and said slowly, "I thought you two would fight for a while, but I didn't expect things to develop to this point. You two brothers still have trust in each other." Uchiha Hideki and Uchiha Ryota simultaneously used their Susanoo to attack Kuroto. Under the two incomparably huge orange-yellow Susanoo, Kuroto's figure seemed incomparably small, as if he was an ant in front of two gods. Chapter 231. Looking at the familiar ghost-masked man in front of him, Uchiha Ryota was surprised. "Didn't I already kill you? Could it be that the previous one was just your substitute?" Hyojin smiled slightly. "Kind of. The one that was killed by Uchiha Ryota in the cave prison was just a clone controlled by Hyojin using the Tenseigan soul descent technique. Hyojin controlled the clone at that time, preparing to stimulate Uchiha Ryota, who was about to escape, to see if he could awaken the Manjikyu Sharingan when Uchiha Ryota was freed. But the result was obviously that Hyojin thought too much. At that time, in order to escape, Uchiha Ryota who was forced into a desperate situation, didn't even bother to hide it and directly started to wear down-the-ceiling technique in front of Hyojin. Hyojin was extremely embarrassed, so he pretended to clean up the surgical equipment and deliberately turn his back to Uchiha Ryota. Because Uchiha Ryota's action of wearing down-the-ceiling technique was too obvious. Even with Suijin's acting skills, he didn't know how to act, turning a blind eye in a more natural manner. So he could only use the excuse of cleaning the surgical instruments as an excuse to turn his back on Ryota and dawdle for a while. Of course, in the following battle, Kuroto deliberately went easy on his opponent. Even if he only controlled an ordinary clone, Hyojin would not be defenseless in front of Uchiha Ryota. He deliberately lost to Uchiha Ryota just to see if Uchiha Ryota can awaken the Manjikyu Sharingan. But to be safe, he still cut off one of Uchiha Ryota's arms, making Uchiha Ryota lose the ability to use ninjutsu. Although the Uchiha clan mainly relies on their Sharingan jutsu to become famous, losing the ability to use ninjutsu will also greatly weaken their combat effectiveness. This is also the foreshadowing that Hyojin deliberately buried for the possible battle that may happen in the future. Thinking of all the things that happened in the cave prison, Uchiha Ryota couldn't help but roar, "You bastard! Are you the one who has been hiding behind the scenes?" Uchiha Hideki said hatefully, "You miscalculated this time, didn't you?" Hyojin chuckled lightly. Miscalculated? Hyojin's calmness made Uchiha Hideki feel extremely angry. His chest bulged violently like a bellows, and he roared, "You never thought that we would awaken the Manjikyu Sharingan at the same time." Hyojin didn't deny it, and nodded, "This is indeed a bit beyond my expectations." Uchiha Ryota's mouth curled up, revealing a hideous smile. "Look carefully. This is the unique Manjikyu Sharingan Jutsu. This is the power of entering the realm of gods. And you are just a humble ant. You are not qualified to covet the supreme power of our Uchiha clan." Uchiha Hideki also chimed in, "Ant, pay the price for your greed." Almost at the same time, Uchiha Hideki and Uchiha Ryota activated their respective susu, one left and one right, and swung their fists towards Hyojin. Boom! With a loud bang, the area where Hyojin was just now was smashed into a deep pit by the huge power of the two susu. And Hyojin, who barely avoided the two susu's fists, fell on a huge protruding rock. Looking at the two brothers Uchiha Hideki and Uchiha Ryota, Hyojin secretly said, "Who was the last person who challenged the Uchiha brothers Susanoo?" The scene in front of him reminded Hyojin of the time when the two brothers Itachi Uchiha and Uchiha Sasuke used their Susanoo. However, the situation in front of Hyojin was obviously not the same as the situation in front of Medicine Master Do. When facing Medicine Master Do, Itachi Uchiha in the state of Edo Tensei was not inferior to when he was alive, and he was not afraid of injury, and he had almost infinite chakras amount. Uchiha and Sasuke were also at their peak at that time, and now Hyojin is facing. One is Uchiha Hideki, whose spirit and body have reached the limit, and the other is Uchiha Ryota, who has also reached the limit and lost an arm and a large area of his body. Hyojin even suspected that if he deliberately delayed for a while, the two brothers Uchiha Hideki and Uchiha Ryota would not be able to hold on. However, considering the strange abilities of the Manjikyu Sharingan, even if he is confident that he can win, Suijin doesn't have the slightest intention of underestimating the enemy. At this time, Uchiha Ryota laughed arrogantly and said, "I have to admit that you bastard do have some schemes, but you have made a fatal mistake. As a mortal, how dare you covet the power of the gods? How about it? Now it is your turn to experience despair." Uchiha Hideki also said, "Don't worry, we won't kill you immediately. Everything you have done to us, we will return it to you." Hyojin, who was half squatting on the giant rock, slowly got up and said, "You seem to have made a mistake." Seeing that Hyojin was still as calm as before, Uchiha Ryota grinned and said, "Haven't you given up yet? At this time, you can still be so stubborn. I am really looking forward to torturing you more and more." Unlike Uchiha Ryota, Uchiha Hideki's heart suddenly jumped and asked, "Tell me, what do we make a mistake?" The Manjikyu Sharingan is indeed a rare treasure. After a pause, Hyojin smiled lightly and said, "But if it wasn't for that pair, it is just a dispensable tool to me." What Hyojin is referring to is naturally the Manjikyu Sharingan of Obsidian. Compared with the Kamui, the other Manjikyu Sharingan are a level lower. Cough, cough. Uchiha Hideki, who was faintly unable to hold on, coughed up a few mouthfuls of blood, and then asked, "What pair? This pair, what do you mean?" The reason why Uchiha Hideki is very concerned about Hyojin's words is because he feels that when Hyojin was controlling him before, he said about the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan is not a lie. It is this point that he is very concerned about, because these secrets about the Sharingan, even he and his brother, who are from the Uchiha clan, have never heard of them. So he is very curious why Hyojin knows so many secrets about the Uchiha clan. Uchiha Ryota urged, "Brother, don't talk nonsense with him. After we catch him, we can interrogate him however we want." Just like Uchiha Hideki, at this time, Uchiha Ryota is also close to his limit. If he can't determine the winner in a short period of time, the consequences will be unimaginable. However, Uchiha Ryota is not too worried, because in his opinion, this is a battle between a god and an ant. Chapter 232. Looking at the exhausted Uchiha and Ryota, Hyojin smiled, and then he slowly raised his hand and began to form hand seals. At this moment, both Uchiha Hideki and Uchiha Ryota had an ominous premonition, but they really don't understand why they have such a premonition. In their minds, no one in the entire shinobi world can resist two Manjikyu Sharingan possessors of the Uchiha clan at the same time. No one can. Suppressing the uneasiness in his heart, Uchiha Ryota roared, "Don't waste your energy, you damn ants. Why won't you obediently crawl under the feet of our Uchiha clan? Is it so hard to admit your lowly life and kneel to the noble Uchiha clan?" Hua! A gentle blue chakra flowed out of Hyojin's body, and in an instant, he completed the hand seals and entered the Tenseigan chakra mode. Do you want to know why? Slowly flying into the air, Hyojin looked down at the Uchiha brothers and said lightly, "That's because you don't know who is a god and who is an ant." After saying that, Hyojin gently clenched his right hand. In an instant, two truth-seeking balls flew out from between his eyebrows and gathered in his right hand, turning into a dazzling golden sword that was as hot as the sun. The golden sword radiated light in all directions, instantly dispelling the surrounding darkness, turning the deep night into a bright day. This, Uchiha Hideki and Uchiha Ryota looked at Hyojin in the Tenseigan chakra mode, and then looked at the golden sword in Hyojin's hand and fell into a daze. As Jonin of the Uchiha clan, the two brothers are not mediocre, not to mention that they have just awakened their Manjikyu Sharingan, so their understanding of the level of power is far beyond that of ordinary ninjas. Because of this, they knew very well that the Hyojin in front of them was not an ordinary ninja. They could vaguely feel that the golden wheel reincarnation explosion transformed from the two truth-seeking balls in Hyojin's hand was a terrifying power that could threaten their Susun. Faced with this sudden change, Uchiha Hideki shouted, "You are definitely not a ninja from the village. There is no one like you in the village. Who are you? Why do you know so many secrets of our Uchiha clan?" Before Uchiha Hideki could finish his sentence, Hyojin, who was in the air, disappeared without a trace. Uchiha Hideki was taken aback, and just as he was about to use his Susanoo to launch an attack, a dazzling golden light suddenly appeared above his head. He flew above my head. When the bright golden light covered his body, Uchiha Hideki finally realized what was going on. Boom! At the same time as the golden light sprinkled down, a loud noise also entered Uchiha Hideki's ears. At this time, Uchiha Hideki, who was exhausted and weak, raised his head, and when he raised his head, he saw a shocking scene. Susanoo. This was a powerful jutsu that could only be used after awakening the Manjikyu Sharingan. This was the jutsu that Uchiha Hideki relied on, the jutsu that he believed would be able to win the battle. At this moment, under the dazzling golden sword of Kurodo, there was not the slightest bit of resistance. Accompanied by a series of cracking sounds, it was directly sliced into two. How? How is this possible? Together with the Susu, Uchiha Hideki's unparalleled confidence in his Manjikyu Sharingan. When he awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan, Uchiha Hideki felt that he was invincible, a demigod that had stepped into the realm of gods, a demigod that could summon the wind and summon the rain. But as the Susu shattered, he found that he was still the same prisoner that was tortured, unable to choose his own life or death. Swoosh! The sound of wind breaking suddenly rang in Uchiha Hideki's ears. Uchiha Hideki, who was still in a trance, had just recovered from his daze when he found that Suijin was already in front of him, only 3 or 4 meters away from him. Uchiha Hideki was shocked and said with a trembling voice. As soon as the word "you" came out of Uchiha Hideki's mouth, his voice stopped abruptly, and his whole body was pulled by an inexplicable force towards Hyojin, who was not far away. Hyojin raised his hand and grabbed Uchiha Hideki's neck, and without any hesitation, he directly plucked the Manjikyu Sharingan from Uchiha Hideki's eye sockets. After that, Kurodo tossed Uchiha Hideki aside and put the pair of Manjikyu Sharingan into the small nutrition tank that he prepared earlier. After Hyojin finished all this, Uchiha Hideki's scream could be heard. At this moment, Uchiha Hideki's face was also filled with shock. From a moment Hyojin attacked to the moment Uchiha Hideki's Manjikyu Sharingan was removed, the whole process only took a few seconds. It was too fast, too unexpected. Until now, Uchiha Ryota is still doubting whether he was caught in a Genjutsu, whether the scene just now was real or just an illusion. At this time, after putting the small nutrition tank containing Uchiha Hideki's Manjikyu Sharingan into the ninja bag on his waist, Hyojin turned his head and looked at Uchiha Ryota, who was at a loss. Hyojin, who succeeded in his attack, didn't feel the slightest bit complacent. When he attacked just now, he noticed that Uchiha Hideki's reaction speed and insight has fallen to the level of a Chunin. Although Uchiha Hideki has the Manjikyu Sharingan in his eye sockets, his current state is no longer enough for him to exert even 1/10 of the power of the Manjikyu Sharingan. Even the most basic insight of a pupillary Kekai shinobi has almost completely lost him. During the battle, he is completely in a state between consciousness and trance. Therefore, the reason why Hyojin was able to succeed is not because Hyojin is strong, but because Uchiha Hideki is only an empty shell. With just a gentle push, it collapsed. Looking at Hyojin, who was walking towards him, Uchiha Ryota asked in horror, "Are you a human or a ghost?" Hyojin didn't relax his vigilance and said lightly, "Didn't you just say that you are a god?" Uchiha Ryota held the Kusanagi pill that Hyojin deliberately left behind and shouted fiercely, "Return my brother's Manjikyu Sharingan to us." As he spoke, 2 lines of blood tears flowed out of Uchiha Ryota's eyes, and his Manjikyu Sharingan also distorted. Knowing that Uchiha Ryota was about to activate the unique pupil technique of his Manjikyu Sharingan, Hyojin didn't dare to be careless, and while rushing towards Uchiha Ryota, he used Rain Wheel Pull to pull Uchiha Ryota towards himself. Chapter 233. Under the effect of Rain Pull, Hyojin in the Sky Blue Tenseigan Chakra mode and Uchiha Ryota in the Orange Susanoo are approaching each other at high speed. These 2 powerful chakra, in the curtain of the night, are like 2 dazzling torches, rushing towards each other. In the flying forward, Hyojin's Tenseigan under the grimace mask is blooming with a bright light, and his small eyes seem to contain the stars in the sky. Through the Tenseigan, Hyojin can clearly observe any changes in Uchiha Ryota's body. There is no doubt that at this moment, the chakra reaction in Uchiha Ryota's body is suddenly intensifying, which straightforwardly shows that he's trying to use the unique pupil technique of his Manjikyu Sharingan. His physical state restricts the use of his pupil technique. This is a good opportunity. In just a short moment, Hyojin was keenly aware that when Uchiha Ryota used the pupil technique of Manjikyu Sharingan, although the chakra in his body reacted violently, it was chaotic, which undoubtedly greatly slowed down the speed of his technique. Whoosh! In a flash, the golden light sprinkled down, accompanied by a sharp whistling sound. Hyojin controlled the golden wheel reincarnation explosion in his hand from top to bottom, slashing fiercely at Uchiha Ryota's Susanoo. The dazzling golden sword instantly slashed on the orange Susanoo. Boom! Suddenly, there was a roar. However, contrary to Suijin's expectations, his golden wheel reincarnation explosion didn't shatter Uchiha Ryota's Susanoo as easily as it shattered Hideki's Susanoo. When the golden sword cut into Uchiha Ryota's Susanoo, close to his chest, it was stuck by an inexplicable force. If slicing Uchiha Hideki's Susanoo was as easy as slicing a melon, then the feeling of the golden wheel reincarnation explosion when slicing Uchiha Ryota's Susanoo was like chopping a wall with a sword. Although he was able to cut through it, he was unable to completely cut through it with a single strike. Ha ha! At this time, under the orange came Uchiha Ryota's wild laughter, and the chakra reaction in his body was gradually rising. Although it was still chaotic, the momentum was getting stronger. Hyojin's expression froze. He pulled out the golden wheel reincarnation explosion that was cut into the shoulder of Sun and slowly retreated into the air. His face showed a faint doubt. In the presumptuous laughter, Uchiha Ryota's Manjikyu Sharingan shed 2 tears of blood. Almost at the same time as the blood tears streaked across his cheeks, the orange Susanoo covering his body began to slowly change. Susanoo, which originally only had half of its body, became tall in the blink of an eye and gradually changed into an orange giant with 4 limbs. Then, the giant's body ignited with a golden flame. These golden flames transformed by the Manjikyu Sharingan chakra, like armor, wrapped around the giant, turning the original orange giant into a shining golden kami bathed in blazing flames. Immediately afterward, a golden diamond-shaped space appeared on the giant's forehead, and Uchiha Ryota, who was hiding in the giant's body, slowly floated up and finally entered the diamond-shaped space on the giant's forehead. Complete form of Susanoo. If it was someone else who saw this scene, they would be stunned, but Hyojin was a little surprised. He didn't expect Uchiha Ryota to be able to use the complete form of Susanoo. But soon, Hyojin frowned. No, he can't do it. Although Susanoo is a common pupil technique of the Manjikyu Sharingan, even geniuses like Jishuei and Itachi can't immediately master the complete form of Susanoo when they just awaken their Manjikyu Sharingan. Not to mention that Uchiha Ryota's physical state at this time is close to the limit, and the chakra in his body is also chaotic. So, according to common sense, with the current state of Uchiha Ryota, it is impossible to use the complete form of Susanoo. Hideki Uchiha, who was killed by Hyojin before, is a living example. Then there is only one explanation. In Hyojin's understanding, the complete form of Susanoo is almost the privilege of the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. Not counting Obsidian's bug-level Manjikyu Sharingan, anyone who can use the complete form of Susanoo has the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, such as Uchiha Madara and Uchiha Sasuke. According to this, Hyojin quickly thought of the only possibility, that is, the unique pupil technique of Uchiha Ryota's pair of Manjikyu Sharingan is some kind of pupil technique that can strengthen Susanoo. The unique pupil technique of each pair of Manjikyu Sharingan is strange and unpredictable. If you have to forcibly classify it, Hyojin feels that it can be barely divided into 4 categories. The first category is the illusion-type pupil technique, such as Jishuei's Kotoemitsu Tsukumi, Itachi's Tsukuyami, and Fuyue's black and white illusion. The second category is the ninjutsu-type pupil technique, such as Itachi and Sasuke's Amaterasu. The third category is the enhancement-type pupil technique, such as Itachi and Sasuke's Amaterasu. The fourth category is the most eccentric and unpredictable space-time pupil technique, such as Obsidian's Kimui and Shinichi's House of Time. And the Uchiha Ryota's Manjikyu Sharingan in front of him is likely to be the third category, the shaping-type pupil technique, and the target of the enhancement is actually Susanoo. The complete form of Susanoo also has the ability to fly. So at this time, Uchiha Ryota controlled his golden fist to fly into the air, looked at Hyojin from afar and said, "Hand over my brother's Manjikyu Sharingan, and I could be merciful and give you a quick death." Looking at the golden Susanoo flying in the air, Hyojin sighed with emotion. Enhancement, shaping-type Manjikyu Sharingan pupil technique, is already extremely rare. I didn't expect that the target of your Manjikyu Sharingan is actually Susanoo. The value of your Manjikyu Sharingan is far beyond my imagination. Even in the final battle with Otsutsuki Kagaya, the complete form of Susanoo was a high-end combat power that could intervene in the battle. So at this time, Hyojin felt like he had won the lottery. Listening to Hyojin's cold comments, it seems that he's still a test subject on the test bench. Uchiha Ryota angrily said, "You are courting death." After saying that, Uchiha Ryota, while coughing blood, urged the golden Susanoo and waved the huge sword composed of golden flames towards Hyojin in the air. There is no doubt that using Susanoo and the Manjikyu Sharingan to enhance Susanoo at the same time has brought a heavier burden to Uchiha Ryota's already weak body. In the vision of the Tenseigan, Hyojin can even vaguely perceive that the vitality in Uchiha Ryota's body is melting little by little. This feeling is as if Uchiha Ryota is forcibly maintaining Susanoo and the Manjikyu Sharingan to enhance Susanoo at the cost of his life. The battle has developed to this point. The outcome has already been determined. Hyojin doesn't even need to attack. As long as he focuses on dodging, he can easily survive until Uchiha Ryota runs out of energy, but he obviously can't do so now. The awakening of the Manjikyu Sharingan by the Uchiha brothers at the same time is already beyond his expectations, and now he is fighting with Uchiha Ryota's golden body in the air. Within a radius of a dozen miles, it is estimated that the battle here can be easily detected. If he can't end the battle quickly and clean up the battlefield, the ninjas in the village are likely to rush here. Secondly, considering the fusion of the pupil power and the evolution of the Manjikyu Sharingan, he still needs Uchiha Ryota to be alive, so he can't just watch Uchiha Ryota burn his life and die like this. Making up his mind, Hyojin no longer hesitated and immediately stimulated the Tenseigan chakra in his body. In an instant, one after another, truth-seeking jade condensed from his eyebrows. Counting the previous two, a total of 5 truth-seeking jade floated beside him. Golden Wheel Reincarnation Explosion. With a light shout, all 5 truth-seeking jade gathered in his right hand, and in an instant, a golden sword of more than 100 meters long was condensed. Uchiha Ryota, who was in the air opposite, also shouted at this time, I'm the real god." At this time, Uchiha Ryota not only had tears of blood in his eyes, but his mouth, nose, and even his ears were bleeding. It is not an exaggeration to describe him with the words bleeding from the 7 orifices. Looking at Uchiha Ryota, who seemed to have lost his mind, Hyojin's eyes showed a bit of pity. Hyojin can now understand why Uchiha Ryota can awaken the Manjikyu Sharingan technique to enhance the Susanoo, because his Manjikyu Sharingan faithfully depicts his obsession with the gods. Glancing at the broken mountain and the forest fire around him, Hyojin said lightly, "It's time to end this." Swish! In an instant, Hyojin held the golden sword, which was about 100 meters long, and stabbed at Uchiha Ryota. His figure flew through the night sky, leaving a long trail of light behind him. He was like a dazzling meteor, unbelievably fast. Boom! The roar sounded again. Hyojin, who changed the slash into a stab, used the golden wheel reincarnation explosion in his hand as a lead, piercing through the flame armor of Uchiha Ryota's Susanoo and his whole body rushed to the front of Uchiha Ryota. Thinking of this, Hyojin quickly placed one of the two clones on the test bench and used a scalpel to remove the semi-finished Byakugan in the eye sockets of the clone. Then he transplanted Uchiha Hideki's Manjikyu Sharingan into the clone. After finishing all this, Kuroto sat on the chair and made a hand seal, secret technique, soul descent. In an instant, Suejin's head tilted and he fell on the chair, and at the same time, the clone on the test bench sat up with a whoosh sound. Hyojin, who had just descended into the clone, suddenly felt an unprecedented sense of dizziness. He held his forehead and adapted to the dizziness for a while before slowly opening his eyes. In the eye sockets, the pair of triangular Manjikyu Sharingan was flashing with a strange light. Hyojin looked a little absent-minded. He shook his head heavily and tried to focus, but the feeling of being in a trance lingered. He couldn't help but sigh. It's really not easy to use eyes that aren't my own. A genius like Kakashi couldn't even bear the burden of a Manjikyu Sharingan that was activated by his own chakra. One can imagine how unfriendly the Manjikyu Sharingan is to non-Uchiha ninjas. Chapter 236. After adapting for a while, Hyojin got rid of the annoying dizziness and was barely able to concentrate. Walking down the test bench, Kuroto staggered step by step towards the mirror, wanting to observe the newly transplanted Manjikyu Sharingan in his eye socket, but as soon as he saw it, he immediately became furious. At this time, the Manjikyu Sharingan in his eye socket actually returned to the state of 3 Magatama Sharingan. No wonder the dizziness disappeared. Just now, Hyojin was a little happy. Thinking that his adaptability is quite good, it only took a moment for him to adapt to the newly transplanted Manjikyu Sharingan. But he never thought that the reason why he could barely adapt to the new Manjikyu Sharingan was because he got the Shinjutsu's Manjikyu Sharingan and returned to the state of 3 Magatama Sharingan. After thinking about it for a while, Hyojin also felt relieved. Kakashi used his own chakra to awaken the 2 Magatama Sharingan given to him by Obsidian into a Manjikyu Sharingan. In terms of affinity alone, the Manjikyu Sharingan that was awakened by his chakra should not have too strong of a rejection towards him. But even so, it took a genius like Kakashi more than 10 years of nourishment and exploration to master the ability to open and use his Manjikyu Sharingan. From this, it can be seen that the transplant is just the beginning. It doesn't mean that after the transplant of the Manjikyu Sharingan, everything will be fine, and you can immediately open the Manjikyu Sharingan and use the Manjikyu Sharingan. Of course, compared with the ignorant Kakashi, Hyojin has many advantages. First of all, Hyojin himself is a pupil Kekai Genkai ninja. In terms of the use of pupil Kekai, he has a unique advantage, which is something that Kakashi can't match. Secondly, because of the Tenseigan, Hyojin has a wealth of experience in using pupil power, especially in the aspect of controlling high-level pupil power. He is almost one of the top ninja in the current shinobi world. Finally, compared to Kakashi, who knows nothing about Manjikyu Sharingan, Hyojin's understanding of Manjikyu Sharingan is obviously more thorough, and the purpose of opening the Manjikyu Sharingan is also clearer, so he doesn't need to spend a lot of time exploring the basics bit by bit like Kakashi. Therefore, Hyojin tried to open the Manjikyu Sharingan by opening the Tenseigan. As Kuroto tried, he soon noticed that the 3 Sharingan in his eye sockets were changing, and the 3 Sharingan in his eye sockets were faintly showing signs of merging together. But immediately after, that familiar dizziness came again. In just a few breaths of time, it messed up his rhythm of opening his eyes, causing his first attempt to open his eyes to go to waste. Covering his eyes, Hyojin half squatted on the ground and gasped heavily, but there wasn't much disappointment on his face. Although his first attempt didn't succeed, He understood that he has found the right method. He just needs some time to adapt to the Manjikyu Sharingan. But right now, what Hyojin lacks the most is time. He can't wait to adapt to the Manjikyu Sharingan. Anyway, the current clone body doesn't have the bloodline of Uchiha, so no matter how he adapts, it will be impossible for him to perfectly use the power of the Manjikyu Sharingan. So it's better to forcibly open the Manjikyu Sharingan to understand the unique pupil technique of Hideki Uchiha. After making up his mind, Hyojin forcibly opened the Manjikyu Sharingan again, regardless of whether the clone body can bear it or not. In an instant, the chakra in his body surged into the Manjikyu Sharingan in his eye sockets, and the previous dizziness came again. TSK, do you think a pair of Manjikyu Sharingan can stun me? Hyojin's expression was a little ferocious, and his expression became more determined. After some time, the dizziness began to slowly subside. Although it was still there, it didn't stop Hyojin from concentrating and thinking. At the same time, Hyojin's vision gradually became clear. When he opened his eyes again, in the mirror, the pupils in his eye sockets had changed from the three-tomo Sharingan to the triangular pattern of the Manjikyu Sharingan. Then, Hyojin received some information in his mind, some information about the Manjikyu Sharingan. Amano Iwato. Hyojin showed a thoughtful expression. Hideki Uchiha's Manjikyu Sharingan's unique pupil technique is called Amano Iwato. When used, it can summon an Amano Iwato to protect one's soul from Jinjutsu attacks, spirit attacks, and soul-sealing techniques. In other words, Amano Iwato is a type of defensive pupil technique, which is somewhat similar to Uchiha Shinichi's Heavenly Guardian. However, Heavenly Guardian is a constant state, while Amano Iwato is a soul protection technique. Rubbing his chin habitually, Hyojin muttered, "This pupil technique is basically useless most of the time, but when I really need it, it can be a life-saving measure." Hyojin wouldn't blindly fight against a strong enemy. Most of the time, he would bully the weak. Therefore, this pupil technique, Amano Iwato, is somewhat useless to him, because his Tenseigan itself has resistance to Jinjutsu attacks and spirit attacks. However, the fact that Amano Iwato can defend against soul seals made Hyojin a little envious. It's just that he isn't sure how strong the Manjikyu Sharingan's pupil technique is against soul seals, and whether it can achieve the effect of complete immunity. If it could be completely immune to soul seals, then Amano Iwato would be a true defensive divine technique. If it can only resist to a certain extent, then its value would be greatly reduced. Then, Hyojin did the same thing and changed to Uchiha Ryota's Manjikyu Sharingan, and carefully learned about the unique pupil technique of Uchiha Ryota. Chapter 237. Regarding the fusion of eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, Hyojin actually doesn't know much about it, because in this regard, there are not many precedents for him to refer to. As far as he knows, only Madara Uchiha and Uchiha Sasuke have completed the fusion of eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. Among them, the Manjikyu Sharingan of Uchiha Madara and Uchiha Azuma have unique Manjikyu Sharingan technique, and Kuroto doesn't know about it. Therefore, the fusion of the Manjikyu Sharingan of the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan of the Manjikyu Sharingan of the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan isn't of much reference value to Kuroto. Therefore, only Itachi Uchiha and Uchiha Sasuke can really give Hyojin some reference. The unique pupil technique of Itachi Uchiha's Manjikyu Sharingan is Tsukuyami and Amaterasu. Before his death, Itachi used transcription seal to seal Amaterasu in Uchiha Sasuke's Sharingan, setting it so that once Sasuke sees Obsidian Sharingan, it will automatically activate the Amaterasu sealed in his Sharingan. Coincidentally, when Sasuke awakened his Manjikyu Sharingan, he also had the ability of Amaterasu, becoming the only case so far where two pairs of Manjikyu Sharingan have the same unique pupil technique. Hyojin can't tell whether this is a coincidence, or if Itachi used transcription seal to seal his Amaterasu in Sasuke's Sharingan, which indirectly affected Sasuke's Manjikyu Sharingan in the future. But this gave Hyojin an idea. Transcription seal may have an impact on the Manjikyu Sharingan to a certain extent. If this speculation was true, then Hyojin would have the best of both worlds. This idea is not complicated. It is just to use the transcription seal to seal Uchiha Haichu's Amano Iwado into the Manjikyu Sharingan of Ryota Uchiha's right eye. In this way, it may be possible for Uchiha Ryota's right eye to inherit the unique Manjikyu Sharingan technique Amano Iwado from Uchiha Hideki's Manjikyu Sharingan. As for the original ability of Uchiha Ryota's right eye, which was the ability to reduce the consumption of Susanu's chakra, it was relatively dispensable to Hyojin. While thinking about the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, Hyojin walked to another room in the secret laboratory. This room was temporarily opened by Kuroto. The walls have been reinforced, and the surroundings are covered with sealing techniques and detonation talismans that are enough to blow up the room in an instant. There are not many furnishings in the room. Only 2 large nutrition tanks are placed in the center. The people in the nutrition tanks are none other than the 2 brothers, Uchiha Hideki and Uchiha Ryota, whose Manjikyu Sharingan had been removed by Hyojin not long ago. After the previous battle, the 2 brothers Uchiha Hideki and Uchiha Ryota were severely injured. Coupled with the removal of their Manjikyu Sharingan, their bodies were extremely weak. Therefore, no one knows better than him where the safest place to appear and where the most convenient place to retreat. The next morning, as usual, after sending out the messenger crow, Jishuei practiced shuriken alone in the small courtyard of his house. Clang, 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 with a sound of metal clashing in the air, Jishuei slowly landed on the ground. He looked up at several targets placed at different angles, and found that each target had a shuriken inserted in the center, and the corner of his mouth could not help but slightly raise. This method of using shuriken to hit each other, changing the trajectory in the air, and hitting different targets, even in the Uchiha clan, is considered a relatively high-end shuriken throwing technique. Clap, clap, clap. At this time, there was a burst of applause in the courtyard. Jishuei looked back and smiled. "Itachi, you are here." "Brother Jishuei, I am here too." A small figure jumped out from behind Itachi, who was applauding. Jishuei smiled and teased. "So, Sasuke is here too. I am really sorry. You were too small. I did not see you just now." Who are these people from Amatsukume? How come I have never heard of them before? Glancing at Yudu, Uchiha Yudu snorted and said, "What? Are you afraid?" Uchiha Yudu smiled awkwardly. "Aren't you afraid at all? Even Ryota was captured by them. If we meet them, I am afraid we will not be able to escape." As soon as he said that, Uchiha Yudu stopped in his tracks. Uchiha Yudu, who was thinking about something, suddenly turned his head and asked, "What's wrong?" Uchiha Yudu pointed in the distance, trembling. Those 2 can't be members of Amatsukume, right?" Following the direction Uchiha Yudu was pointing, Uchiha Yudu looked in that direction. In the distance, 2 figures were slowly walking in this direction. They were both wearing the black gold-lined cloaks of Amatsukume. One of them was wearing a mask with a flame pattern on his face, and the other had a mask with a wind pattern on his face. Sure enough, they are members of Amatsukume. Secretly shocked, Uchiha Yudu shouted in his heart, "Damn it, I really ran into them. What should I do?" The achievements of Amatsukume, along with the large-scale encirclement and suppression of the village, have been spread to almost every street in Mai. Among them, Suijin resisted the 3 generations of Naruto for a long time, and with the help of Homusubi, successfully got rid of the pursuit of the 3 generations of Naruto and a large number of Umbu. On the other hand, Homusubi defeated Jishuei, who has the Manjikyu Sharingan, as well as Ryota and Hideki, 2 Jonin ninjas of the Uchiha clan, and successfully escaped from the siege of a large number of Uchiha elites led by the Patriarch. These few achievements alone are enough to show the terror of Amitsukami. Among the two members of Amitsukami walking towards them, one of them was obviously the one who defeated Jishue and captured Ryota and Hideki, Homusubi. As for the other member of Amitsukami who was wearing the hurricane mask, although the information did not introduce him, since he was able to walk side by side with Homusubi, his strength must be extraordinary. Uchiha stuttered, What should we do? Uchiha took a deep breath and said, Release the signal flare. What? Uchiha was taken aback and immediately said, Aren't we dead for sure? Why don't we run away now? Uchiha took out the signal flare from the ninja bag on his waist and said with a bitter smile, Don't be silly. Do you think we can still run away now? After saying that, Uchiha shot the signal flare without hesitation. Whoosh, bang. Looking at the signal flare blooming in the air, Uchiha let out a sigh of relief. Although it was daytime, and the signal flare in the air was not as eye-catching as it was at night, but because this was a carpet search, there were many ninjas nearby, so Uchiha was not too worried that others would not notice the signal flare.